In that world, healers were known for their remarkable abilities, and for that reason, they were appointed to prestigious positions. There was even a royal academy dedicated to training the finest healers in the kingdom. Most healers were classified into 3 ranks: first degree, second degree, and third degree. Yet there was a man named Zenos who, unlike them, did not possess even a license to use healing magic, but that never stopped him from helping people in every way he could. Zenos purchased a house in the southern part of the kingdom, far from the noise of the city, in order to treat those who needed help. After he finished treating the man who had been in his office, the man placed the payment on the table and thanked him, and Zenos replied that it was no problem at all, so long as the fee was paid. After the man left, his assistant Lily entered and reminded him that he had a home visit. He told her that he would leave immediately, and Lily informed him that she would prepare dinner for him when he returned after a few hours. Zenos completed the medical visit, and as he was returning home, he noticed a girl who seemed to be in severe pain. Suddenly, a nobleman appeared and shouted at her, demanding to know why she was there. The girl tried to explain that a sharp pain in her abdomen had driven her to go to the hospital, but they refused to treat her because she had no money. The nobleman looked at her with contempt and told her that a mere stomachache was not a valid reason to visit a hospital, especially since she was nothing more than a slave. He then dragged her by force and commanded her to return to her work at once. He took her to the cemetery and threw her onto the ground, causing her head to strike a rock on one of the graves with a violent impact that could have cost her life. As she lay on the ground writhing in agony, a strange black energy seeped into her body. It was a terrifying sight, but the nobleman did not notice, thinking she was only pretending. He ordered her to get up immediately, but she was unable to move from the intensity of the pain. He approached her and threatened to bury her in the grave next to them if she did not obey his orders. Then he kicked her forcefully, sending her tumbling away. When he grew tired of her delay, he ordered her to search the cemetery for anything of value, then left her and walked off. But it seemed that either the unbearable pain, or perhaps the black energy that had surged into her body, made the girl collapse entirely. Suddenly she lunged at him and slashed his abdomen with a deep wound. The nobleman was stunned. He had never suffered such an injury before. He tried to calm her down and speak to her, but then remembered that just moments ago he had been beating her and insulting her, and it was clear she was intent on vengeance. Realizing that words were useless, he ran off in search of anyone who could help him. Zenos happened to be passing by, and the nobleman rushed toward him in desperation and told him, "My slave has gone mad and wants to kill me." Zenos had already witnessed what had happened earlier in the street, and he understood well that the nobleman deserved everything that was happening to him. The girl arrived, and the nobleman continued begging Zenos to save him. The moment Zenos looked at her, he saw the black energy surrounding her. He asked her directly, "What were you doing?" When he asked the nobleman what had happened, the man did not tell him the truth, that he had been digging up graves, but instead claimed that they had been planting. He quickly tried to change the subject, saying he was severely injured and needed to go to the hospital immediately, offering money in exchange for saving him. But Zenos had no interest in his money, and although he disliked that nobleman, he had sworn to save any life he could. When the girl attacked the nobleman, Zenos grabbed her and pulled her away at the last moment. She threw some rocks at him, but he dodged them effortlessly. The nobleman said to him, "If you are that skilled, why not kill her and be done with it?" But Zenos refused and said that he had a clear principle. He would never kill anyone, no matter what happened, because his primary purpose as a healer was to save as many people as possible. But what was truly strange was that when the girl hurled a massive rock at him with great force, Zenos struck it with his hand and shattered it completely. How could a healer possess such strength? Zenos noticed that the girl was incredibly fast, faster than any natural human or beast, and this made him suspect something unnatural. When she tried to attack him again, he instantly summoned a shield and blocked her strike. The moment she collided with it, she was launched backward, crashing into a nearby building, and part of the building collapsed onto the nobleman himself. After things calmed down, Zenos approached the girl, whose leg had been broken from the violent impact. She was trying to crawl away, still appearing unnatural. Zenos held her firmly after biting her hand to restrict her movement, and he realized that she was possessed. He placed his hand on her head and began healing her to expel the evil spirit inside her, and he succeeded. The nobleman was still alive, and he watched Zenos heal the girl's broken leg in mere seconds, stunned by what he saw. Then he remembered that he himself was critically injured and began begging Zenos to treat him, but Zenos said coldly, "We are closed for today. Wait until tomorrow." The nobleman was shocked. He knew he would die if he waited. He pleaded desperately, and Zenos finally told him he would treat him, but for a higher price. The nobleman said, "Take everything I own," and paid him an enormous amount that far exceeded the usual rate. but Zenos said with the same icy tone that it was not enough. He did not care about money, but he wanted to make the nobleman pay for what he had done. The nobleman threatened to report him for exploitation, but Zenos replied casually, I am a healer without a license to begin with. Report whatever you wish. And so the nobleman found himself trapped with no escape. Then Zenos said to him, look, I can make you a good deal. I will take the money. And also, this girl. Since the girl had no value to the nobleman, he agreed immediately and handed Zenos her ownership contract. After that, he received treatment and left, barely able to stand from the severity of his injury. Zenos sat beside the girl until she regained consciousness. When she opened her eyes and saw Zenos, she asked in astonishment, You? Who are you? He answered, I am Zenos, and I have purchased you. You now belong to me. Then he told her, Now, take off your clothes. The girl was taken aback and asked him in shock, Are you joking? But Zenos was not joking. He told her, You have paid a lot, and I must make sure you are all right. In the end, she had no choice but to comply. She was already his property, so she obeyed. The moment Zenos looked at her body, he understood immediately. He recognized the issue and noticed that she was in pain. The girl was suffering due to a stone in her gallbladder. Zenos placed his hand on her abdomen and, using magic, performed the entire operation in a single second, removing the stone and closing the wound as if nothing had happened. He carried out the procedure in mere moments. The girl asked him, What did you do? He answered simply, I opened your abdomen, removed the stone, and closed it. All normal. But the girl knew that no healer could perform such a feat, so she thanked him. Zenos told her that thanks were not enough. He had invested in her and expected her to work to repay the debt she owed. At first, Till thought Zenos might demand something inappropriate from her, but to her surprise, he only requested that she bring him a specific plant he had been searching for. Till found this request strange, but she went and guided him to the location where the leaves he wanted were. She asked him, Is this all you want? I am ready to do more if you wish. But Zenos told her it was enough. He preferred to take his due fairly. She had helped him, and thus the debt between them was settled. Afterwards, he tore up her bondage contract and told her, You are free now. Do as you wish. Till could hardly believe it. She was bewildered, not knowing where to begin after becoming free, yet she was certain she could try new experiences and go wherever she desired, all thanks to Zenos. She asked if she could see him again. He smiled and told her she could visit him at any time, and he would heal her if she were harmed, but of course not for free. At that moment, while Zenos was working outside the house and Lily was preparing dinner, the smell was so intense that Carmilla, the ghost who lived with them, came down to see what was happening. Lily saw her, and Carmilla said she was eager to taste the food, though there was still some time. Lily told her to wait a little. Suddenly, a girl named Sophia entered, looking for Zenos. Lily informed her that he was working outside, so Sophia decided to wait for his return. After a few minutes, Linga also arrived searching for him. When she learned he was not there, she said she would wait as well, then was surprised to see Sophia there. Then, suddenly, a girl named Lu broke through the door as she entered. Lily hurried to greet her, but Lu told her to enter only after she fixed the door she had broken. Lu had also come to see Zenos. Lily could not understand why everyone was looking for him. Lu smelled Lily's food from afar and wanted to taste it. Finally, Lily finished preparing the meal and left the girls in the kitchen to complete some work. But no sooner had she left than the girls could not resist the aroma. They went to taste it. Yet they did not merely taste it. They devoured the entire dish, every last bit. Regret soon appeared on their faces, for Lily would surely be furious. Indeed, Lily returned and saw what had happened. She was extremely angry and demanded that they stand ready and explain exactly what they had done. Later that night, Zenos returned home. Lily apologized to him for the dinner not being ready as she had promised. She explained that she had found a solution. She had sent the girls to fetch ingredients for another meal, and what they brought back exceeded her expectations. With this, she would be able to prepare a proper feast that day. But before all of that, she knew he had been exhausted all day, so she said, Wait while I prepare you a cup of tea to ease your mood. Let us leave this for now, and move to a flashback revealing Zenos' past. We discover that he had once been a member of a global adventurers team. One day, his leader, Aston, threw a gold coin in front of him and said, You are expelled from the team. You are a poor, useless burden. We do not need you, and none of us needs the likes of you. Yet the truth was that Zenos knew he was the only one keeping the team standing. Aston, however, saw it entirely differently. He told Zenos that he had only been brought along to serve as a human shield, to take the hits for them, because no one would care if he died in a battle. When Zenos tried to explain that the team's strength was due to him, as he healed them each time, Aston laughed and said that Zenos's haphazard methods of healing meant nothing, and that any other healer could do what he did, and even more. Zenos took the coin and walked away. Meanwhile, there were 2 slave traders trying to restrain an elf girl named Lily to sell her. The woman with them warned the man to be careful not to harm her, for elves were rare and expensive if kept in good condition. The man held her down, pinning her to the ground, but Lily did not give in. She delivered a powerful kick that sent him flying, screaming in intense pain. Seizing the opportunity, she ran, attempting to escape. She was almost free, but unfortunately they had a bow, and they shot an arrow that struck her leg. She fell to the ground, unable to continue running. One of them returned to grab her again, but Lily bit his hand so fiercely that he was forced to stab her to free himself. At that moment, Zenos was passing by when he saw Lily lying on the ground, soaked in her own blood. He asked them, "Did you do this to her?" They replied arrogantly, "Step aside. This is none of your business. We have legal immunity in this country, and we own her and may do with her as we please." Zenos knew their words were legally correct and that he had no power to stop them, but an idea struck him. He said to them, "Very well, I will buy her." He offered them the gold coin he had taken from Aston, although its value was far below the true price of an elf. Lily was on the brink of death, so they agreed, took the money, and left. After they departed, Zenos approached Lily and asked if she was still alive. She had resigned herself to her fate and asked him to leave her, but he said confidently, "You will not die." She looked at her wound in astonishment, for she saw that Zenos had already treated her. She thanked him and apologized for the money he had spent on her, but Zenos said he did not want that money at all, for it reminded him of Aston, and he burned the coin because it had come from him. He asked if she had a home to return to, but she said no, and she was also hungry. He told her he would buy her food and clothes before anything else. Indeed, he took her to a nearby restaurant, and on the way he bought her a new set of clothes. Lily began eating, delighted beyond measure, yet she was surprised that he had not ordered food for himself. He told her he was not hungry, but the truth was that he was completely broke. He had spent all his money on her food and clothes, and after being expelled from his team, he would likely have to search for a new job. Just then, a man entered the restaurant who was clearly injured, his arm pierced and his body covered with burn marks. Zenos saw the wound from a distance and thought to himself, "It seems he was struck by a magical weapon." He reached out and began treating him, and within seconds the wound had completely closed. The man was astonished and asked, "Who are you?" Before Zenos could answer, a woman proudly said, "This is Zenos, the legendary healer." The man had never heard of him before, but he thanked him and gave him some money. At first, Zenos wondered why he was given money. Then he remembered that healers usually charge for their services. An idea occurred to him: to open a clinic and become a professional healer. However, being one of the unorthodox types, it would be extremely difficult for him to obtain an official healing license. Even if he worked legally, he would have to pay exorbitant taxes. Therefore, he decided to be a healer in secret. Lily did not understand what he meant, yet since he was determined to open the clinic, she wished to help him. Zenos pondered for a moment, knowing that opening a clinic without a license was illegal, and he was uncertain whether it was right to involve an innocent child in such an endeavor. But Lily remembered that he had just purchased her ownership, which meant he had become her master, and therefore it was her duty to follow him, no matter the law. While Zenos had no intention of being her master, he merely wished to assist her. Lily said, "If you do not let me go now, I will become a slave again, and that will be your fault." Zenos finally agreed to let her accompany him. However, for Zenos to open his clinic, he needed a place to live, as he was currently homeless. He took Lily to an abandoned part of the city, searching for a suitable house. Lily was puzzled and asked, "Why do you want to live here?" He explained that he needed to hide so that the Royal Medical Association would not discover that he had opened an illegal clinic. Additionally, the place was abandoned and devoid of residents, which meant finding a house to live in would be free. Although convinced by his explanation, Lily was still worried, knowing that abandoned places often harbored terrifying monsters. After a short search, they found a structurally sound house, with a stable roof and strong pillars. Zenos said, "This is the place." But the moment Lily saw it, she felt a mixture of shock and fear. The house resembled a haunted house straight out of a horror movie. She said, "Perhaps we will encounter an evil ghost here, or in the worst case, a Reese." Zenos did not know what a Reese was, so Lily explained that they were terrifying undead creatures inhabiting the house. The house was completely dark, so Lily suggested using her magic to illuminate the place. Zenos was surprised that Lily could use magic, but she clarified that she knew only a few simple spells, nothing more. When her spell lit up the space, they could see the house clearly, and it was far worse than Lily had imagined. Yet Zenos considered it perfectly suitable for his clinic. But the real problem arose when Aris appeared, claiming the house as its own and declaring it would destroy them. It introduced herself as Carmilla and attacked Zenos. He countered her with powerful healing magic, easily repelling her strike. Zenos was not afraid of her at all, for he was accustomed to facing similar situations. Under Aston's leadership, he had been thrown into dangers alone whenever Aston was angry, and he had battled ghosts and monsters like these many times. Zenos had already slain more than 100 Reese before, and it was evident that his healing magic worked exceptionally well against these monsters. Zenos returned to his matter with Carmilla and apologized to her, explaining that he had entered her house without prior permission. He clarified that he had no other place to live and asked if he could reside there with Lily. Carmilla became furious and exclaimed, "How dare you ask to live with me? I am the Queen of Ghosts." She immediately summoned a large number of ghost servants to expel him, but Zenos, calm and composed, used his powerful healing spell, sweeping the floor with a single strike, astonishing all the servants with his strength. Carmilla was shocked by his abilities and began to worry, yet she was no longer determined to throw him out of the house. Zenos calmly requested that she assign him a room and a space to operate his clinic. She relented and said, "Take the ground floor, but the second floor is mine." Zenos saw the deal as excellent, yet Lily began to hesitate, unsure whom she feared more, Carmilla or Zenos himself. The next morning, Lily felt bored because no patients had arrived yet. She said to Zenos, "Go out and do some publicity." He refused, saying, "If anyone at the Kingdom Hospital discovers the clinic, it will be a huge problem." Zenos did not expect to wait long for their first visitor. Within a few minutes, the door opened and a man entered. Lily quickly stepped forward to greet him, and she realized he was the same man Zenos had treated the day before. Zenos had anticipated his return, as individuals exposed to magical injuries rarely go to ordinary hospitals to avoid revealing their condition. The man introduced himself and said he had brought his sister, Sophia, to see Zenos. Zenos observed Sophia and noticed a slight injury on her arm's skin. She explained that she had been harmed yesterday and that the matter was far from normal. Zenos immediately understood that she had been exposed to magic containing poison. Sophia asked if anything could be done. Zenos answered candidly, "Since you remained under the poison's influence all night, the tissue in your arm has completely died. The best solution now is to remove the arm to prevent the poison from spreading through your body." Sophia was saddened by the prospect of losing her arm, yet she knew it was the optimal solution. She asked Zenos, "How much will this procedure cost?" He replied, 1 million. Upon hearing the amount, her brother flew into a rage, exclaiming, 1 million for an arm? He was extremely agitated, but Sophia tried to calm him and began negotiating with Zenos. She said, "Are you certain you want to take this sum from me?" Zenos knew full well that Sophia the Cyclone was one of the 3 gangs controlling the region, and he knew precisely who she was, yet he did not work without compensation. Regenerating limbs required tremendous effort, so Zenos said to her, "Who said I will merely cut off your arm? I will remove it and then recreate a new one for you." Sophia was shocked. She had never heard in her life of a healer capable of regenerating an entire limb. Zenos himself was also surprised at her reaction, as he had not realized this ability was uncommon. He assumed all healers could perform it. He had taught himself and did not know what was ordinary and what was rare. But there was no time now to discuss that. He said to her, "Let us begin." Sophia agreed. Zenos prepared her on the table and started the procedure. He formed a magical blade from energy, but Sophia felt anxious, having never seen anything like it before. He explained, "This is merely a blade of mana, extremely sharp, 100% sterilized, and perfect for surgery. Don't all your healers use such blades?" Sophia replied, "No." Zenos began the operation. He administered anesthesia, then cut off the damaged arm. He then doubled the power of his healing magic and began constructing a new arm, layer by layer, until it perfectly matched her natural arm. Sophia was amazed and declared she would no longer object to the fee, for it was undoubtedly deserved. She added that she would send all her injured men to him if he agreed. Zenos responded, "As long as they pay, they are welcome." In the following days, Zenos treated a large number of Sophia's gang members. One day, Lily brought him some tea to calm his nerves. Zenos thanked her and then asked, "Why did you make 3 cups? There are only 2 of us." Lily replied, "I made one for Carmilla as well. Perhaps she will wish to join us." Zenos was doubtful, uncertain if Carmilla would even come down to the ground floor, but it turned out she loved tea, and she descended to sit with them. While they were sitting, Lily asked, "Have you noticed that Sophia's men always come to us with severe injuries?" Zenos told her he had noticed, and from what he had seen repeatedly, he began to suspect that a war was ongoing between the gangs. Before he could continue, the door burst open violently, for one of the gangs had decided to enter personally to make the matter clear. A group of werewolves stormed the clinic, led by their commander Linga, who announced loudly, "I have come to kill Zenos." She explained that for days she had been killing Sophia's gang members, yet they kept returning to her as if nothing had happened, so she had decided to eliminate anyone who healed them in the first place. Zenos responded calmly, "First, I do not work for Sophia's gang. Second, I do not welcome violence here." But Linga had already ordered her men to kill him. Zenos had formed a magical barrier to protect himself. No matter what they did, it had no effect on him. He did not even move from his place. At that moment, Linga began to realize that she could not defeat Zenos, so she decided to act more cunningly. She would collapse the entire clinic on top of him. It was a devious plan because she did not know that this house was not Zenos's alone, but also Carmilla's. The moment Linga and the werewolves saw Carmilla, they froze in fear. They knew very well that the leader was a deadly beast and had no chance against her. Carmilla intended to annihilate them as punishment for what they had done, but Zenos stopped her, saying, "Wait, I do not want anyone to die inside the clinic." He then told Linga that he was willing to forgive them on the condition that they repair everything they had damaged. Linga was shocked, unable to believe that the leader would heed the orders of someone like him. She immediately bowed before him and began to apologize and seek his forgiveness, while Zenos said, "As long as you and your men cause no trouble here, I will forgive you, and you are welcome any time." Things proceeded excellently for Zenos after he brought Linga and her followers under his control. One day, an orc entered and informed him that her leader wished to meet him. Zenos was not surprised. He had anticipated this, especially as he had previously dealt with 2 gang leaders in the region. Before leaving, he asked the orc, "And why did she not come herself?" The orc replied, "She cannot. She is completely immobile." As soon as Zenos heard this, he realized she was ill and needed treatment, so he swiftly set out to see the matter. The orc led Zenos to a cave where he met Lu. The moment she saw him, she said that she had been waiting to meet him for some time. Zenos asked her, "And how did you know about me?" She said, "The lizards and werewolves have not stopped talking about the kind secret healer, who is not supposed to be known to anyone." Zenos thought to himself, "All right, the profession's secret is out, but we will find a solution later." Lu told him that she had heard he could heal any injury as long as he was paid enough, and she had come to witness his abilities for herself. Zenos approached her and raised his hand. She asked in surprise, "What are you doing?" He replied, "I see no external wounds, so I will perform a scan to see if the problem is internal." She was astonished, noting that most healers could not do that, but he responded, "Then how would they heal people without examining them?" After completing the scan, he discovered a mass in her abdomen, and this mass contained a magical inhibitor. He concluded that it was a mana stone. He asked her, "Is this mana stone enchanted with an explosive spell? Because if it moves from its place, it might detonate." She replied, "Yes." He asked, "Did anyone try to kill you? Did they put it in your food?" She said, "Absolutely not. I was extremely hungry and mistook it for a large rice ball, and I ate it. Anyone could make this mistake." Zenos told her, "Do not worry, the stone will leave your body over time, and of course, you know how it will come out." But Lu replied, "No, it is not like that. I chewed the stone before swallowing it. It was on the verge of exploding." At that moment, she no longer cared if she died. What bothered her the most was that her men did not want to leave her and depart. Zenos said to her, "So, what do you expect from me?" She replied, "I brought you here to leave all my wealth to you before I depart from life. Before the empire I built collapses, and I want the money to go to those who will benefit from it and serve people, not to a greedy person." As she spoke, she handed him a key, saying, "This is the key to the vaults of my treasures. Take it after my death." Zenos responded, "Did I not tell you I will not let you die?" Without another word, he summoned a magical scalpel and approached her, beginning to open her abdomen. Her men tried to stop him, but before they could do anything, Zenos had already grasped the stone in his hands, and within seconds he extracted it and treated the wound without harm. Nevertheless, the wound remained dangerous, so Zenos held the stone in his hand and pressed it until it exploded. The explosion was enough to destroy an entire district, yet Zenos protected his hand with defensive magic and was unharmed. He returned the key to Lu and said, "Keep your wealth for yourself. There is no need to donate it now." Even so, if she still did not believe that Zenos had truly chosen to save her instead of taking her money, he simply explained that he only takes a fair price for his treatment and charges only for his full work, which seemed somewhat excessive. From that moment, Lu's heart began to soften toward him, and she began to feel something for him. She said to him, "If you ever need any help, all you have to do is ask, and I will be there to assist you." She even offered to send her men to carry his clinic, but he refused, seeing that the presence of her men might cause more problems than it would solve. A few days later, Lily sat troubled at the reception because of Sophia and Linga, as they had begun visiting the clinic almost daily, without having any real injuries. Zenos began to notice this. He observed that these individuals entered and exited frequently, but none of them were harmed. He began to suspect that perhaps they were merely bored. But Carmilla said to him, "My dear, they care for you. Be understanding." Zenos was greatly astonished and thought to himself, "I am merely a simple healer, not a heroic figure or anything of the sort." Yet Carmilla spoke with certainty, and Lilia began to worry that one of them might indeed try to abduct Zenos for herself, though she said nothing. Zenos spoke candidly to her. "I will not go out with any of them. I am sorry." All three of them were violent and rebellious, yet Carmilla told Zenos, "Wait, and you shall see that these three will soon fight because of you." Her vision came true exactly the next day. Sophia arrived at the clinic carrying fruit and told him that she was considering declaring war on the others. She was followed by Linga and Lu Jom with the same intent, all refusing to heed any word from Zenos. He disliked their manner, but he realized he had no choice but to act. Indeed, the three headed to the grand square, each accompanied by her men, ready for a bloody battle. Suddenly, Zenos appeared before them, and everyone stared at him, awaiting his words. Yet he shocked them by saying, "I will not prevent the fight. On the contrary, I know there are old grudges between you. Settle your scores as you wish." The three stood firm and said, "Whoever remains standing in the end shall win Zenos's heart." Zenos was astonished and exclaimed, "When did you agree to this?" Yet the battle had already begun. Sophia lunged at Linga with knives, but Linga evaded the attack and leapt to strike Sophia, who moved with incredible speed. Those who were hit were the men of each side, and the entire square became a true street war. The confrontation continued for 6 consecutive hours without a single fatality. Sophia noticed that her wounds were healing on their own, and she asked Zenos, "What is happening?" He smiled and said, "It is I who am healing you fools. I agreed to the fight but not to death, for you are still human." Everyone was amazed, for no one had ever known of a healer capable of treating such a large number of people simultaneously for 6 continuous hours. They began to understand the message. The fighting would not end until they reached understanding among themselves. Zenos said to them, "If you insist on fighting, I will continue to heal you, but I shall charge by the hour." The three of them realized the depth of their foolishness and decided to reconcile and treat each other with peace from that moment onward. Nevertheless, the war persisted, but in a non-violent manner. Each remained determined to win Zenos's heart, yet this time without swords or henchmen. In the end, Zenos asked Sophia, "Why did you do this? Why trouble yourself?" He recalled the words of his mentor from long ago, who had said, "A true healer knows that real power does not lie in weapons, but in the ability to bring change." A healer who treats ordinary injuries is a third-class practitioner, whereas second-class healers, as previously mentioned, can restore the entire body. First-class healers, however, are capable of making the world a better place. Zenos honestly does not see himself as first class, yet he still carries hope to improve the lives of the poor and make a difference. One might ask, how dare he, having taught himself and never met the great author? The point is, if he let these people perish, they would have no one to heal them, or at least that is what he tells himself. Lily knows that his words in this regard are meant to conceal his kindness and concern for others. Everyone reached an agreement, and no conflict remained. This meant Zenos would no longer have patience as he once did, yet he resolved to continue helping them, a part of the reason Lily admired him, even admitting her respect to him frankly. As evening approached, Zenos decided to go collect his due payment before returning home. At that moment, someone joked, suggesting that Zenos would demand payment for the healing he had performed amidst the fighting. But Zenos was serious. Treating such a large number of people was extremely taxing, and it was only natural that he should receive compensation. Meanwhile, the commander of the kingdom's knights was speaking with his deputy Krishna. She asked if anything had occurred, and he replied that he had heard a rumor claiming the gang war had ended. Krishna was extremely astonished, for this conflict had persisted for years in the slums, and it was hard to believe it could end so abruptly. The commander himself was skeptical of the rumor, but he noted that if it were true, the kingdom would need to take action. The noble system was structured so that the wealthy remained at the top while the poor stayed at the bottom, maintained precisely because the impoverished were occupied with internal strife and did not demand their rights. Yet, should peace be achieved, they would unite and demand services such as free healthcare, something the government most certainly did not desire. The rumor suggested that a mediator had intervened and halted the fighting. The commander decided to assign the task of identifying this person to Krishna, and she agreed to search for him and capture him for his alleged crime. Meanwhile, in his clinic, Zenos suddenly sneezed, causing those around him to be momentarily startled. Calmly, he reassured them that it was nothing serious, and reminded them that he still had work to complete. He asked for a little quiet until he finished treating Sophia. Once he completed treating Sophia's arm, she thanked him and asked how she had been injured. She explained that the injury occurred during her work the previous night. She had been stealing from corrupt nobles to distribute wealth to the poor. While raiding one of the nobles' houses, she was unexpectedly confronted by Deputy Commander Krishna, who unleashes magical shots on anyone she targets. Carmilla sensed that if Krishna focused her attack on Zenos, a great disaster could occur. Yet Zenos remained calm, confident that someone of Krishna's rank would pay little attention to a mere individual like him. At that very moment, Krishna was patrolling the slums, searching for information about Zenos. She observed the people living in peace and approached a lizard, inquiring about the person who had ended the war. The lizard, aware of Zenos's wish for secrecy, claimed ignorance. As he attempted to walk away, Krishna drew her weapon and threatened him with death if he did not answer. The man remained composed and replied calmly, "Shoot, I am prepared to take the bullet." At that instant, Sophia and her brother happened to pass by, and Krishna was unprepared to confront them. She was forced to flee. During her escape, she stumbled upon Zenos's clinic and entered, seeking directions. Zenos agreed to guide her to the central city. However, at that moment, Lily emerged from inside, carrying tea. Upon seeing Krishna and her tall ears, Lily immediately recognized her as the wanted person. She drew her weapon and fired at Zenos's head. Lily was stunned, unable to believe that Krishna had suddenly fired without warning. Krishna calmly explained that she had a compelling reason. She had been tasked with investigating a series of kidnappings in the area. Recognizing that Zenos was human and Lily an elf, she assumed immediately that he had abducted Lily, prompting her to draw her weapon and strike directly. Lily quickly realized that something was amiss. She explained to Krishna that Zenos had actually adopted her of his own free will, without any coercion. Upon hearing the story, Krishna realized that she had judged too hastily. Fortunately, the bullet was not lethal. Zenos may have merely lost consciousness. Everyone was astonished when Zenos appeared unharmed, without a single scratch. Krishna apologized to him, saying she had acted impulsively, yet she remained astonished at how easily he had endured the bullet. Zenos replied simply that he had used a defensive spell to intercept the bullet before it reached him. Nevertheless, Krishna was unconvinced, insisting that no ordinary defensive magic could stop her shot. With her experience as the deputy commander of the kingdom's knights, she had witnessed countless forms of magic, and considered the shield Zenos had used to be on par with the most skilled sorcerers. When Krishna mentioned her position as deputy commander of the royal knights, both Zenos and Lily tensed, realizing that her presence could bring complications. It seemed Krishna had come specifically to request something from Zenos, so he was careful to proceed cautiously to avoid any repercussions. Zenos agreed to speak with Krishna, but at the same time, he issued a warning to all his assistants not to approach while they were seated. Once they had settled, Krishna informed Zenos that she was on a secret mission and required his assistance. He initially refused, stating that he did not wish to get involved, but Krishna insisted, explaining that all citizens must comply with the orders of the kingdom's knights. Since she was persistent and determined, Zenos feared she might act against him again, so he decided to help. She explained that her mission was to locate and apprehend a particular man, though she did not know his name or appearance, only that he was the person who had ended the war among the gangs. Zenos was taken aback but tried to control his reaction. He asked why she wished to capture this man. Krishna responded that the orders of the knights could not be ignored, and anyone capable of achieving peace among people could pose a threat to the balance of power, and thus must be placed under surveillance. When she attempted to interrogate a resident of the slums by force, he refused to speak, which only strengthened Krishna's conviction of the man's danger. Zenos tried to calm her, explaining that the man was merely a simple mediator seeking an honest livelihood, and that if left alone, he would cause no harm. When Krishna asked if he knew the man, Zenos promptly denied it, clarifying that it was only speculation from her perspective. Yet Krishna was not one to relent. She received direct orders from the commander of the knights and believed that anyone capable of halting a war could threaten stability and therefore must be monitored. When Lily intervened, asserting that this mediator posed no threat to the state but merely sought lawful means of earning a living, it became clear that she knew him well, which aroused Krishna's suspicion. Lily attempted to save herself quickly by claiming she did not know Zenos, but the doubts continued to grow. Nevertheless, she decided to remain silent for the time being and set the matter aside. Over time, Zenos sought to conclude the discussion. He told her that they should rest for a while, then gently guided her toward the door. In her haste, she stumbled and fell onto the bed in the corner. Krishna was astonished and asked him how the bed came to be in that spot, and Zenos did not know how to answer, for he did not wish to reveal that he slept there because of a ghost roaming upstairs. He simply said, "It is merely a spare bed." Upon hearing that the bed was unoccupied, Krishna immediately asked, "May I sit here for a while?" She had been searching for a place to carry out her mission in the slums for a long time, but had found no suitable location. If Zenos allowed her to stay until she completed her task, she would be immensely grateful and willing to pay rent. Zenos could not refuse without raising further suspicion, so he agreed to assist her, and Carmilla could not suppress her laughter at the scene. At the end of the day, Lily fell asleep, and Zenos gently carried her to the bed before returning to the living room to continue speaking with Krishna. He began recounting the day he rescued Lily from the slave traders and discovered that these individuals were part of a vast human trafficking network, which explained Lily's swift reaction upon seeing Krishna. Unfortunately, Zenos had no further information about the network. Krishna then asked an unusual question. Is it possible, if one trains well in healing magic, to restore a lost arm? Zenos was about to respond that such a feat was nearly impossible for ordinary people, but she interrupted him, asserting that it was indeed impossible and that anyone capable of such a restoration must be either a powerful sorcerer or among the highest-ranking healers. Krishna displayed great interest in the matter, explaining that she had engaged in a confrontation with a woman named Sophia and had believed that Sophia had damaged her arm, yet upon observing her arm as it had been 2 days prior, she began to suspect that someone might possess the power to restore an entire limb. If true, such a person would undoubtedly hold considerable influence among the gang leaders. The following day, Krishna set out to search for any evidence that might lead her to this healer, whom she perceived as dangerous. Zenos, puzzled by her belief that any healer could be sinister, asked her, "Do you think all the residents of the slums are evil?" She answered candidly, "Yes. My mother was kind and loved helping others. She would always go into the slums to distribute food to the needy, but one day she did not return, and the people said she had been killed for stealing her husband's ring." The knowledge of her mother's fate filled Krishna with heartbreak, for while her mother had saved many, no one had saved her. From that moment, Krishna resolved to join the knights, determined to become an indomitable hero and seek vengeance on the criminals of the slums. The next morning, Krishna resumed her search, while Zenos returned to tend to his patients. Sophia arrived with a minor wound on her arm and requested treatment. As Zenos began his work, he cautioned her to remain vigilant, for Krishna could appear at any moment. Without warning, Krishna entered the clinic, and the moment she saw Sophia, she drew her pistols, while Sophia pulled out her knives, and the two stood in a tense standoff. Krishna asked Sophia seriously, "Is there an evil healer who gathers criminals and threatens the people?" Sophia did not answer with a denial, but she stated confidently, "The healer is not evil at all. I am naturally a thief, and I know very well that some nobles commit far worse acts." Then Sophia informed Krishna that she had heard of her investigating a child trafficking gang, and upon her inquiry, she discovered that behind it all stood a noble. Krishna was shocked to hear this, for the gang was hiding in the slums, and in her view it was impossible for a noble to be behind such an act. Sophia replied calmly, "It is a well-crafted deception. They use the slums as a cover to stay away from the royal knights." Krishna preferred not to believe it and asked for the name of the person responsible. Sophia simply answered, "Kalendor." Krishna was extremely astonished, for he was known for his love of orphans and funding their education, making it impossible in her eyes that he would be selling children as slaves. Sophia had anticipated Krishna's reaction, knowing that Krishna saw all the slum residents as criminals and trusted no one, unlike Zenos, who had never distinguished between rich and poor, helping everyone without judgment or discrimination. This provoked Krishna to the point that she nearly fired at Sophia, but Zenos calmly stepped in, saying, "Calm yourself." He tried to push her away, but told her it would be useless because Sophia was injured and could not be left to suffer harm. Then Zenos revealed the truth to her, saying, "I am the person you are seeking, daughter of the people." Krishna doubted his words, believing he was lying to cover for Sophia, and said, "It is impossible for him to be the healer. He is a master of defensive magic, so how could he also be skilled in healing?" Zenos laughed and said, "I do not claim to be a master, but healing and defense rely on the same principle, activating the natural functions of the body." Krishna was still unconvinced, yet she respected Lily, whom Zenos had introduced the previous night, and decided to leave without causing trouble. As she departed, Zenos noticed she was heading toward the noble district. He understood that she had taken Sophia's words seriously and was going to confront Kalendor, though she could not face him directly. Instead, she pretended she had come to discuss the thefts occurring in the area. Kalendor replied, "Let us address the issues related to Sophia's recent injury." She told him that she intended to increase patrols in the area and needed to inspect matters thoroughly. He agreed and took her on a tour inside the palace. After the tour, he asked her opinion on the security measures, and she praised him. Yet at one point, she noticed something strange. The backyard was excessively secured. Before leaving, she requested to use the restroom, and when she exited the office and glanced at the garden, she saw a secret entrance. She was shocked to realize that Sophia had been right all along, and that Kalendor was indeed behind the child abductions. But before she could do anything, Kalendor appeared behind her, holding the pistol she had left there. He threatened her and struck her arm, laughing as he said she should never have come to investigate, and that he would finish her off to continue his trade without interference. Before he could carry out his threat, Sophia and Zenos arrived, and Zenos, worried when he learned where she had gone, asked Sophia to guide him there. Kalendor disliked the presence of witnesses, so he switched the pistol to lethal mode and fired at Zenos' face. Yet, to his shock, Zenos remained standing. Though he felt the pain, he was unharmed. Panicked, Kalendor attempted to flee, dropping his weapon in the process. Zenos, who refused to kill anyone, chose instead to subdue him non-lethally. He set the pistol to non-lethal mode and fired a shot to the head to frighten him. Then, Zenos rushed to Krishna, who lay on the ground. She told him it was useless. Her arm was severely damaged, a large part of her abdomen exposed, and she had lost all hope. Zenos, confident, told her, "You will be fine, but the cost of the treatment will be very high." She braced herself for the shock. In a short while, she returned to full health, stunned by the speed of her recovery. At that moment, she began to believe that he truly was the man everyone spoke of. Deciding not to arrest him, it became clear that he was a genuine hero, not a villain. Yet Zenos himself did not see himself as a hero, merely as a healer preventing people from dying. Indeed, if anyone deserved to be called a hero, it was Krishna, for she had been the first to act to save the children. Though she sometimes acted hastily or passed erroneous judgments, her heart was pure, and her ultimate goal was to save the world. Sophia and her companions helped to free the children from the storage, but Zenos knew that the royal knights were approaching, so he and the others decided to withdraw before their arrival. Before leaving, Krishna ran after him and asked, "Why did you help me, even though I was your enemy at the time?" Zenos turned to her with a smile and replied, "Because you owe me some dues. You haven't forgotten. There is the rent for the night you stayed in the clinic, and the cost of the treatment. I want the full amount by the end of the week, so beware." With Zenos no longer preoccupied with Krishna, his life began to return to normal with Lily. Yet the truth was, Zenos' life had never truly been normal. Orphaned in his youth, he had lived in the slums without food or hope, spending his days sitting aimlessly in the corners of the streets. One day, Stone was walking through the alleys contemplating the use of a child as a servant or even as a human shield when he spotted Zenos. He approached him and spoke in a sly manner. "You are poor and hungry without work. Come with me on an adventure." Zenos thought the man was kind, yet he hesitated, for people like him had no right to embark on adventures at all. Stone tried to persuade him. "If you have skill, you can become anything." Stone asked, "Do you know how to do anything?" Zenos replied, "I know how to practice a type of healing magic." Stone laughed quietly, dismissing the idea that a street orphan could know such magic, which normally required years of study at the King's Academy. Nonetheless, Zenos indeed knew how to perform it, while Stone planned to use him as a trap or a distraction if necessary. When Zenos agreed to accompany Stone, they were taken to the forest, where they faced a wolf-like monster. Injured during the battle, Zenos used his magic to heal him. When the monster attacked again, Zenos cast another spell that increased Stone's speed, allowing him to decapitate the creature with a single strike. Strangely, Stone did not notice how his wounds had healed, or how he had become faster, and he assumed that Zenos was useless. After that, Stone was expelled from the team. Everyone knows what Zenos did afterward, but the lives of Stone and his team were never the same. During a mission, they entered a large cave to prove themselves to the nobles, yet all of them were dissatisfied with the work. One day Stone said to them, "Let's finish quickly and return to rest at the hotel." Andre was excited because the girls were running after the team. When they discovered that they were part of the Golden Phoenix team, the legendary team known for completing missions without injuries, the team regained some of their former prestige, though this was long ago. As soon as they faced the monsters attempting to kill them, the sun drew his sword and asked Jules to place a protective enchantment on it. The enchantment was completed, but during the battle, one of them was injured in the arm and set ablaze. At the same time, they were attacked by another monster. Stone shouted at Andre to cast an offensive spell, but Andre was too slow to prepare it, and suddenly, a fireball struck him before he could finish chanting. Stone was shocked and wondered, had his team always been like this? It seemed they had no intention of winning. He shouted and ordered an immediate withdrawal. When they exited the cave, the sun asked, "How were you unable to defeat him in front of such a powerful monster?" Andre replied, "And what did you do?" Jules began to suspect. Perhaps they did not realize that Zenos had been healing them all along, that he was the true source of the team's strength. But Stone dismissed this idea. Impossible. No one like Zenos could have done that. To ensure the team's safety, they decided to summon a specialized healer. After several days, they returned to the cave accompanied by a healer named Ma, who said to them, "I am not a battle specialist. I only practice healing in the capital. But since I possess an adventure license and I am in Taji, I will assist you." She was quite surprised that the Golden Phoenix team, renowned for completing missions without injuries, required a healer, yet she refrained from interfering beyond that, allowing them to focus on their task. Joel, usually calm, inquired about Stone's condition after his previous injury. Ma informed them that a healer named Alma had taken care of him and expressed confidence that he would survive. However, she emphasized that his state was very critical and that he would not be able to return to the field of adventures. Stone, indifferent, responded coldly, "He never deserved to stay with us anyway." When they turned their attention to the mission, they realized it was crucial for Stone. A prominent noble desired to craft a scarf from the fur of a firefox, an object that would endanger his daughter. If Stone succeeded in fulfilling this request, he would win favor with Rotor Lord. Suddenly, the wolves reappeared and attacked without warning. Stone immediately struck back, instructing Joel to cast a magical shield to protect the entire team. The monster attacked ferociously and could not be touched by Gold. Even when 4 fireballs were hurled at it, the shield deflected 3, but the 4th struck Andrew in the abdomen. Ma cried out, insisting that he be removed immediately because his condition was critical. For the second time, Stone could not believe what was happening. Upon exiting the cave, he yelled at her, asking why the shield had not been sufficient, but she explained that it had performed perfectly, and that without it, Andrew would have lost his life. Stone then demanded she heal him quickly. Ma clarified that such an injury required a high-level healer, and that the chances of saving him were slim unless he was transported immediately to a fully equipped hospital. Afterward, Stone went to meet the Lord's servant, who informed him that the Lord was extremely angry. Stone attempted to regain a second chance, but the gift had already been delayed, and the Lord's daughter had celebrated her birthday. What angered the Lord was not merely the failure, but that Stone had insisted on continuing the mission instead of telling him plainly that the task was difficult or impossible. Stone considered blaming Zenos, but he remembered that Zenos had not been registered as a leader, nor officially part of the team. No one could blame him. Reluctantly, Stone bowed his head and apologized, feeling humiliated to have to apologize to a servant. He promised to make amends. The servant asked how he intended to do so, while half of his team had perished. Stone replied that he planned to recruit new members and prepare a new team for the next mission. After the servant departed, Joel asked him, "Are you really planning to continue? We haven't even found people to join us." Stone responded confidently, "I have a plan." Perhaps Zenos did not like him or consider him important, yet he could not deny that the team had been far better when he was present, so he decided to bring him back. The next day, Stone and Joel went to the poor districts in search of Zenos, but they did not know where to begin until a brilliant, or perhaps foolish idea occurred to them. They would contact the 3 gang leaders to help locate him, certain that these people would do anything for money. Soon after, one of Sophia's men arrived and approached her while she was not particularly busy, as she had an appointment at the clinic. However, upon learning that money was involved, she decided to listen to what he had to say. Stone introduced himself, claiming to be the leader of the Golden Phoenix team, and stated that he was looking for a man named Zenos, who had appeared in the poor district about 2 months ago. At first, Sophia could not believe what she heard, for Zenos had previously told her that Stone had expelled him from the team, a foolish act in itself, and even more foolish was that Stone had now come searching for him after what had happened. Sophia responded angrily, "Get out of my sight. Zenos has more important matters than to sit and listen to you." Stone felt annoyed and stood there, contemplating attacking her. Sandry, having observed the behavior of those around him, restrained his recklessness and regained his composure, returning his sword to its place after Sophia had closed the door in front of him. He then decided to test his luck with Linga. Upon recognizing his identity, Linga met him with stern coldness and ordered him to leave, which bewildered Stone, who considered creating chaos to achieve his goal. Yet Linga's steadfastness forced him to retreat. She could have defeated him 3 times before he could even blink, so he refrained from any further action and withdrew. Afterward, he approached Lu, believing she might be able to find a solution. She warned him firmly that if he attempted to harm Zenos, he would not survive and would face severe consequences. At that moment, Stone and Joel withdrew from the cave, astonished to see the leaders of the major factions all aligned in support of Zenos. Stone could hardly believe it, attempting to convince himself that they were speaking of someone else with the same name, for he could not imagine that the Zenos he knew had earned such respect and admiration. Suddenly, Joel spotted Zenos walking through the streets alongside Lily after completing several missions. Stone called out to Zenos, who was surprised to see them but chose to ignore them and continue forward. Sun stood behind him, raising his voice, urging him to return to the Golden Phoenix squad. Yet Zenos refused without hesitation, leaving Sun utterly shocked, as he had expected Zenos to rejoice at the thought of rejoining. Zenos recalled all the mistreatment he had endured from the very beginning, from insults to the crushing grip of poverty, and realized there was no reason to return to that team. However, if Stone was determined, Zenos could assist with certain missions for a defined payment. He clearly stated his terms: 50,000 for treating ordinary injuries, 1 million for serious wounds, with additional fees for any defensive magic or enhancements. He made it unequivocally clear that without the readiness to pay, no negotiation would occur. As Zenos began to leave, Stone felt frustrated by the public refusal and raised his sword in an attempt to attack him. Before he could act, however, a powerful spell struck him from Krishna, causing him to collapse to the ground. He immediately understood the folly of his actions, especially in front of a royal knight, for Krishna had originally come to monitor Zenos, and since Sun attempted an assault, it became necessary to apprehend him. Sun tried to flee as fast as he could, fully aware that he would not escape punishment. After the situation settled, Zenos and Lily returned to their home. Shortly thereafter, Sophia and Linga arrived, informing him that Sun had attempted to solicit their help in finding Zenos, though all of them had refused to intervene. Despite rebuffing him, Sophia remained concerned that Sun might try again to reach Zenos and warned that if he resorted to the illicit lower guild, he could hire assassins to end Zenos' life out of vengeance. Yet hiring mercenaries was not without cost, and if Stone had to search for Zenos himself rather than recruit new team members, it likely meant he was bankrupt. Nevertheless, Sophia's worry persisted, particularly because of rumors surrounding a figure in the lower guild known as the Mentor, said to be capable of executing tasks for free under certain conditions. If Stone managed to convince him, Zenos could find himself in serious trouble. Amid all this tension, Zenos could not sleep. Suddenly, Carmilla appeared, concerned, and sat beside him to ask, "Did you truly learn the healing magic in the slums?" Zenos replied that he had been trying to restore corpses to life, and that the healing magic had begun to manifest naturally, without prior study. Carmilla remarked that necromancy was forbidden, yet she defended him, acknowledging that he had not known it was prohibited at the time. As she spoke, memories of her past returned, days spent living amidst the wars between the Demon King and the army of golems. Suddenly, Zenos heard a tremendous commotion outside the house. Carmilla approached to investigate, and as soon as she stepped out, she was confronted with an immense disaster. A vast portion of the slums was ablaze, fire engulfed the area, and destruction spread in every direction. It became evident that Stone, driven by poverty and financial need, had been unable to hire a professional mercenary. Instead, he had turned to the man known as the Guide, who agreed to undertake the task for free, but insisted on hearing the full story first to decide whether whether it was worth his time. Stone began recounting every detail to the guide. The latter could not suppress his laughter at Stone's sheer selfishness and folly, yet he showed interest, remarking that the matter seemed entertaining, especially since he wanted to test his new weapon at the same time. Zenos, Carmela, and the others arrived in the city, and upon witnessing the scene firsthand, they were shocked by the scale of the devastation. It was far worse than they had imagined. Immediately, Sophia, Linya, and Lu joined them, and all of them sought Zenos' help, as a large number of people had been injured by the violent assault of the golem. Zenos inquired if they knew the source of the golem, but unfortunately, they had no idea. All they knew was that it had emerged from the deep sections of the slums. Zenos began to suspect that the underground secret guild might be behind these events, but he decided to postpone any theories for the moment. He instructed them to gather all the injured in one location so that he could begin treatment. Once he finished, he vowed that the one responsible would deeply regret their actions. Meanwhile, the guide observed the scene from a distance, enjoying the golem's power, though he thought its speed required slight improvement. Nevertheless, he concluded that this golem was sufficient to accomplish his mission, for he knew little about Zenos but was eager to witness his reaction as he watched his friends fall, one by one, before his eyes. In the city, Linja, Lu, and Sophia gathered their soldiers, ordering each to search for the injured and bring them to Zenos. Once everyone was in place, Zenos began preparing to heal them. He asked Carmela to step back slightly to give space and to avoid any harm or accidental interference due to magic. He then cast a healing spell, and everyone immediately noticed the improvement. When he completed the spell, he instructed them to leave the area quickly. Afterwards, he checked on those who were beyond the spell's reach to continue their treatment. He was furious, not only because he had been forced out in the middle of the night, but also because he had to treat hundreds of people. He resolved that the individual responsible for this destruction would pay dearly, yet, at that moment, he still did not know who it was or what their goal had been. On the other side, the mentor was stunned by Zenos' strength, for he had not expected him to save all these people in such a manner. He had been certain that some of them would perish amidst the chaos, yet he discovered that Zenos was a healer of the highest caliber. Still, even with continuous healing, the golem would persist in destroying everything around it. Zenos completed the treatment of all the injured, and everyone moved away from the area, yet the golem continued its relentless devastation. Zenos asked Carmilla if there was any hope that the golem might retreat or leave on its own. She replied that it was impossible. The golems were programmed to continue until they achieved the purpose for which they were sent. That purpose was clear: to annihilate the slums entirely, and they would not stop until it was erased from the map. Carmilla also explained that the distant magical stone controlling the heart of the golem was supposed to have ceased functioning since the Great War, and this was the first time Zenos had witnessed a golem of such power in years. Zenos wanted a brief rest, but time did not permit him. He had to act swiftly before the situation worsened. His companions offered their assistance, but he asked if they were confident in themselves, as he could not guarantee their survival if they were injured during the battle. Each one was ready to take the risk, and they resolved to stand with him and protect their city, no matter the cost. It was essential to devise an organized plan to confront the golem. Zenos asked Carmilla how they could defeat it. She explained that they must destroy the magical stone within its heart. Otherwise, it would never cease. Zenos hesitated momentarily, for he had intended to sell the stone for profit, but ultimately he decided to cooperate with the team. He turned to them and said, "Strike the golem with all your might, and I shall provide support throughout the battle." The three charged immediately to attack the golem. Zenos cast a spell to increase their speed, making their movements faster. As they approached to strike, he cast another spell to enhance their strength, and their blows were enough to shatter one of the golem's legs completely. The golem lost its balance and fell to the ground, yet their joy was incomplete, for the magical stone in its heart granted it the ability to reconstruct itself endlessly. Suddenly, Linga collided with the golem, and her flying device shattered. Naturally, her body should have suffered complete fractures, but thanks to Zenos' magic, she remained unharmed and perfectly well. It had been a long time since their last encounter of this kind, yet the echoes of the battle lingered vividly in their minds. Zenos entered the real battle, still regaining his sense of movement and mastery of combat, yet he gradually began to regain control over himself. He focused on two crucial matters. First, not to stray from the rest of the team to ensure the continuous effect of the spells, and second, that he could not use the the spells of speed, strength, and healing simultaneously, for each spell had a different activation sequence, requiring him to switch between them according to necessity. After a short while, Zenos noticed that the golem no longer moved on its own. He realized that delivering powerful strikes simultaneously could temporarily immobilize it. He instructed the team to attack its second leg, and they successfully brought it down once more. But disaster struck when Sophia saw a little girl hiding inside one of the houses, and the golem was about to fall on her. Zenos was too far to cast a protection spell in time, so he raced at full speed to save the child, yet he could not reach her in time. Logically, the girl should have perished, but suddenly, the golem stopped falling, a phenomenon deemed impossible, for golems ordinarily possess no emotions or will and cannot distinguish humans. Carmilla was astonished, declaring it utterly illogical, while Zenos himself was more bewildered. He quickly cast a spell on the golem, only to uncover a shocking revelation. Stone was inside the golem, transformed. The man who had created the golem had used it as a means to activate the magical stone, as the stone was far too complex to create a natural golem alone. He had decided to merge it with a human, and stone had become the unfortunate vessel. Zenos drew a deep breath and ordered the team to withdraw from the battlefield. Everyone was perplexed, yet they trusted his judgment and left him to confront the situation alone. Zenos addressed Stone, telling him that the time had come to settle everything between them. Their connection had begun when Sun had taken him from the streets, and Stone had always harbored selfish intentions. But today he had saved a small child, proving that a part of humanity still remained within him. Zenos reflected that Stone had sought wealth and power after his sister's death, as he had been unable to save her. Yet his saving of the child now was driven by human instinct. This did not justify his previous actions, but it raised a question. Did a spark of humanity still dwell within him? Ultimately, Stone was unconscious, and Zenos had no choice but to confront him. Stone attempted to destroy him, but Zenos moved swiftly, activating his weapon and transforming it into a massive sword, severing the golem's arms. Then he struck with a powerful wind blow, creating a large opening in the golem's chest, through which Stone's true body was revealed. Zenos hesitated, but he realized that the mission had to be completed to prevent an even greater catastrophe. Zenos readied his sword and thrust it into Stone's chest. The mentor, who had been observing the events from afar, was taken aback by the swiftness of Zenos' action, yet when he recalled the previous torment and humiliation Stone had inflicted, he understood it as a justified measure in Zenos' eyes. In truth, however, Zenos did not intend to kill him. His target was the portions fused with the magical stone, aiming to liberate Stone from its grip. Once that was accomplished, he immediately set about healing Stone's wounds to keep him alive. The mentor was astounded by Zenos' ability to handle hundreds of injured people moments ago, and then turn his full focus to this intricate task with unwavering precision. Frankly, Zenos was indifferent to whether Stone lived or died. Yet he saw the necessity of someone paying for all the destruction that had occurred. Stone, already destitute, would not have permitted himself to die without confessing and revealing the creator of the golem. Knowing Stone's ruthlessness, Zenos also understood that the reward in gold coins had been what allowed him to save Lily and establish the clinic. As a healer, Zenos vowed to save every soul, no matter who it was, even one like Stone. He raised his sword and struck the magical stone decisively, shattering it completely and severing Stone's connection to the golem. Calm returned to the scene, and when Stone regained consciousness, he began to grasp the magnitude of Zenos' power. He saw clearly how Zenos had assisted the team leaders in battle, and realized that his previous assumptions about him had been wrong. Zenos treated everyone with fairness, even under the harshest circumstances. Stone looked at Zenos, clenching himself in tension, but Zenos said coldly, "Raise your head. Not because I forgive you, but so I can restore order to the chaos in which you've lived for years." Zenos had waited for the right moment to strike Stone, and now, with him awake, there was no room for mercy. Amplifying his power tenfold, Zenos delivered a series of crushing blows, leaving Stone unconscious on the ground. After several hours, Stone awoke to find Krishna standing above him. She told him that she had met Zenos along the way and had been briefed on the sequence of events. "You are fortunate," she said plainly, "because no one died. Otherwise, you would have faced charges of murder." Zenos did not leave the situation without taking further measures. The authorities decided to press multiple charges against him, including destruction of public property, assault on civilians, and committing an indecent act in a public area. Moreover, the box he had received from Zenos had ruined all of his clothes. They also explained that Zenos had requested her to deliver a message stating that he had taken his sword while unconscious, that the sword was valuable, and that he could earn a good sum of money to cover the costs of the damages. She handed him a gold coin as a severance reward, emphasizing that Zenos did not wish to see him again. Stone turned to the ground, overwhelmed by defeat, realizing he deserved everything that had happened to him and had, in fact, lost everything. Zenos, meanwhile, was utterly exhausted, barely able to stand. The women were visibly concerned and offered him assistance to return home, but he declined, acknowledging their own fatigue. Upon returning to the clinic, Carmilla began recounting the events. When Zenos entered, Lily greeted him with a smile and a cup of tea, while Krishna tried to investigate who was behind the golem incident. Yet, no clear lead emerged. The individual was known only by the title The Mentor, and moved with extreme caution, to the extent that the location where Stone had met him yielded no evidence. Sophia was probing the secret guild, attempting to gather any information about the Mentor. What she discovered suggested that he had recently begun appearing in this area, but nothing further was known. Krishna considered the Mentor a dangerous figure and decided to keep track of him, though she did not expect him to appear soon. Sophia, however, had a different perspective, believing that individuals of this nature never act randomly and were likely planning a significant operation. Krishna expressed her frustration, saying, "Enough assumptions without evidence." Sophia responded calmly, insisting that she was merely providing an opinion. Zenos then intervened, saying, "Enough argument, let us set this aside." He turned to Krishna and asked why she had returned alone to the far end of the room, pointing out the difficulty of speaking with her from a distance. Krishna replied that she was grateful to Sophia for her assistance, but as a royal knight, she could not appear as if joking or laughing with people from the slums. Zenos sensed the rising tension and decided to prevent anyone from approaching, insisting that no one would return to the place today until he had fully recovered. After sitting in his office, trying to relax for a moment, Zenos decided to grant himself a brief respite for leisure. He planned to go to a hotel with the girls. At that very moment, a massive explosion erupted in the kitchen, the same kitchen that had witnessed chaos in previous episodes with Heller. On that day, Heller, whom we had seen in previous episodes and who had taken Zenos' place in the team, rushed to assess the situation. She found one of the workers on the ground, severely burned. It became clear that he had been preparing breakfast when the magical firestones in the stove had erupted, leaving him in critical condition. Thanks to her healing skills, Heller began treating him and stabilizing his condition, though she was unable to restore his arm to its original state, and confirmed that he needed to be transferred immediately to the nearest royal hospital. At that moment, Zenos arrived to inspect the situation. Heller requested his assistance in carrying the man to the hospital. However, Zenos, judging from his perspective that the injuries were not severely critical, insisted that he could treat them immediately himself, saying, "This is a simple matter. I must act at once." With complete calm, Zenos began healing the man entirely without uttering a word, and the injuries vanished completely. Heller quickly realized that it was truly Zenos who had saved the man, for the ability to heal such a condition demanded an extremely high level of expertise or a prodigious healer, thus confirming Zenos' brilliance. Afterward, Heller quickly returned to her duties to inform her superior, Arnardo, who was astonished to learn that such a healer of this caliber was moving among the people. He noted that the government would be keen to benefit from him, despite the difficulty of locating him, as all they knew was that his hair was black. Nevertheless, Arnardo sensed that Zenos was of good nature, for he had healed the injured man without demanding any compensation. Later, Arnardo noticed that Zenos wore a black cloak, which drew his attention profoundly. He began contemplating a method to reach him. Since there were no official records of Zenos, he assumed that he might be unlicensed and perhaps operating in the poorer districts. Thus, he devised a clever plan to reach him within the same day. Zan entered Zenos' clinic carrying a man who was extremely exhausted, bleeding, and coughing up blood. The man collapsed to the ground, and Zenos immediately attended to him. Zan warned Zenos that the man might be contagious, suggesting that people should maintain distance until an initial examination was completed. Upon examining the patient, Zenos observed that the man's lungs were severely damaged, reminding him of the deadly red lung plague that had previously swept through the city. Zenos instructed Lily to step back immediately, for the disease was spreading rapidly, though it should have been eradicated long ago. Suddenly, Arnardo rose from his place, revealing that he had been pretending, and informed Zenos that there was one of the elite healers at the royal hospital, though he was not highly skilled in restorative magic. Shortly after, the clinic's doors burst open with someone screaming, realizing that Arnardo had intentionally compromised his own health merely to meet Zenos. He responded, explaining that he had no other choice and that his body was extremely fatigued. Reaching into his pocket, he withdrew a small vial and drank from it. assuring Zenos that he had deliberately triggered the symptoms of the red lung so that people would indulge him. Yet he calmed him by noting that the antidote had been taken and the effects would soon dissipate. Zenos asked how he possessed such an antidote. Arnardo explained that he had been working on it for days while studying the cure for the red lung, which impressed and astonished Zenos, confirming that he was indeed the renowned physician who had perfected the treatment for this deadly disease. Arnardo acknowledged this with humility. He then offered Zenos the opportunity to work alongside him at the royal hospital as he faced a problem in need of his assistance. Suddenly, the young women entered the clinic. Hearing that a stranger was troubling Zenos, they prepared to rebuke him. Yet Arnardo reassured them that his presence was not for confrontation, but solely to offer Zenos a professional collaboration. Sophia asked Zenos if he was confident in what he was doing, to which he affirmed, asserting that this was indeed the correct decision. Once the royal hospital had become acquainted with his clinic, Zenos realized that earning the support of someone like Arnardo was crucial, particularly as he had previously distributed the cure freely to the impoverished districts from his own resources during the outbreak of the red lung. This had earned Zenos both respect and trust in Arnardo's capabilities. The following day, Zenos accompanied Arnardo to the royal hospital, marveling at the immense scale and grandeur of the facility. Shortly thereafter, they arrived at Arnardo's office, where he began explaining the details of the task he wished Zenos to undertake. Recently, numerous individuals had been disappearing under mysterious circumstances. Arnardo asked Zenos to investigate the matter. Zenos responded candidly that agreeing to espionage was not within his usual duties. Arnardo, however, reassured him, explaining that the person in question was currently a member of the royal hospital staff, granting him access to specialized systems and programs that would facilitate the gathering of information with ease. Zenos remained anxious, fearful that his true identity might be revealed amidst so many people. Arnardo calmed him, explaining that he had prepared a cover story. If anyone inquired, Zenos could claim that he had been studying abroad and had recently returned. Zenos was not entirely convinced, suspecting that such a tale might amuse the other healers. Yet Arnardo insisted that the presence of an elite healer vouching for him would ensure credibility, and that few questions would be asked. Afterwards, Zenos was taken to the hospital's private residence, which would serve as his accommodation for the upcoming period, and there he was surprised to find Lily waiting for him. He asked her why she was there, and she replied that Arnaldo had approved her residence papers alongside his, as the housing regulations allowed a healer to live with his spouse or first-degree relatives. Lily shook her head and said, "So I am officially your wife," though in reality she had registered herself as if she were his younger sister. Her suggestion aimed to make Zenos feel at ease with someone familiar around him. Zenos felt grateful for this thoughtful gesture, and as he prepared to move, Carmilla appeared suddenly. Zenos was aware of Lily's presence, but he could not understand why Carmilla had come to the capital. Frankly, she had no strong reason other than her love for excitement and mischief around Zenos, as strange and entertaining events always seemed to surround him. Zenos advised her to remain cautious, for amidst all the healers at the hospital, someone might notice her presence and attempt to ensnare her. Yet she was confident, asserting that no one but Zenos could stop her and that the others were not strong enough. Zenos sat with Lily in the cafeteria and asked her if she had begun adapting to the new situation. She replied that she was not worried, though she had noticed his deep preoccupation and his lack of understanding regarding how to obtain the official healing license. Lily reassured him, explaining that she knew the procedures. She told him that the first step was to pass a competency test in healing, then join the Royal Academy of Healing. After many years of study, one could take the examination granting official licensure as a healer. Zenos was astonished by the immense effort required and wondered how people could endure all of it. But Lily did not stop there. She further explained that after obtaining the license, one must pass another exam to work as an adventurer in the field, and the same applied if one wished to serve with the army, with additional tests for those wanting to remain at the healer level. Most within the institution either worked in research or continued their education. Matters became even more complex for Zenos when he asked Lily to go straight to the point and inform him about the people who had recently disappeared. The cafeteria door opened, and a man dressed in gold entered. Zenos asked Lily about his identity, and she replied, "This is the deputy director of the Royal Hospital and a 7th-class advanced healer." Zenos did not fully understand the meaning of the 7th rank, So Lily explained to him saying, healers are divided into 3 levels: beginner, advanced, and elite. Each level contains 7 grades, and the 7th grade in magical healing is the highest rank attainable. This means that Gotoubun is a very important figure here, and he intends to run for the position of director of the Royal Hospital, as the current director rarely appears due to his advanced age. Gotoubun is practically the one managing the academy. His presence in this position changes much within the hospital, but not in a positive way. Only the wealthy receive luxurious and immediate treatment, while the poor at best get an ice pack and a bandage. He does not seek to advance his healing abilities, and rumors suggest he achieved the 7th grade through bribery rather than effort. Zenos formed a clear impression of Gotoubun's character, and so he wished to avoid him at all costs. Yet he realized this was impossible, because his suspicion that Gotoubun was connected to the disappearance of Alphard forced him to confront him. Gotoubun is ambitious, seeking rapid promotion, and so he gathers talented individuals around him. Alphard was one of these people. Zenos asked if Gotoubun had made any statement regarding Alphard's disappearance, but the man completely denied any involvement. Zenos understood that he would need a plan to reach someone as prominent as Gotoubun, and was unsure how to proceed. Lily reassured him, saying not to worry, for if he demonstrated his healing abilities in one of the Academy's programs, Gotoubun himself would come to meet him. Zenos knew he was skilled, yet he had never compared himself to other healers, and was not entirely confident in his own strength. Still, he resolved to try. Suddenly, one of his friends, named Krishna, approached and asked Lily why she was sitting alone eating in a corner of the hall. She replied, "I am free. I eat wherever I wish." When he saw Zenos, he immediately recognized him as the distinguished student nominated by one of the elite healers. Feeling a pang of jealousy, he left, saying to Zenos, "I hope you do not reveal the person who nominated you through your failure." Zenos asked Lily about him, and she told him that Krishna was her college peer. He was competent, but since being chosen by Gotoubun, he had become very arrogant. Zenos recalled his childhood days when he attempted to resurrect a corpse in his neighborhood and create a zombie. Suddenly, his mentor appeared and struck him on the head, saying, "Do not waste your magic on the dead, use it to help the living." From that moment, the mentor began training him in healing magic, along with another child. After a year, both became talented healers, but the mentor always warned them, "Do not overestimate yourselves. Merely treating some wounds does not make you a high-grade healer." At present, Zenos attended his first class as an official student, and the lesson topic was about ghosts. He was already familiar with this subject from his previous adventures, yet the professor's method of explanation was excellent and easy for any beginner to comprehend. The professor asked the students if anyone had any questions. A student raised his hand and inquired about the powerful ghosts known as the Rees. The professor admitted that his knowledge of them was limited, but it was known that they held the highest rank within the ghost category. Every adventurer team that had encountered them had vanished entirely. The only solution when facing one was to flee, and the most dangerous among them were capable of speech, indicating both intelligence and extraordinary power. Zenos was astonished to realize that a Reese was present now, speaking while sitting in the house with Lily, which, of course, was Carmela. He had not known her power reached this level, so he decided to keep the secret to avoid causing panic. Then the professor asked if anyone had ever confronted a ghost. Chris raised his hand and introduced himself, explaining that several years ago, as an adventurer, he had managed to defeat around 30 ghosts. The audience was amazed by the number of ghosts and applauded him warmly. Chris enjoyed the attention but noticed that Zenos was not clapping. He turned to him and asked, "And how many ghosts have you killed?" Zenos replied that he had actually faced around 50 ghosts at once, but he said 30 to downplay his superiority. Chris accused him of lying, but Zenos insisted that he had indeed defeated 30 ghosts in a single battle. Silence fell for a moment. Then the students began asking him how it had happened. He explained that they had entered an underground labyrinth full of ghosts, where he continuously cast healing spells until he had defeated them all. The students understood that he was speaking about the Ghost Labyrinth, a place even golden tier adventurers hesitate 1,000 times before entering. Everyone was amazed, except Chris, who still believed Zenos Zenos was lying because he could not accept that Zenos had surpassed him. In the following lesson, the topic was magical circles. Chris decided to sit next to Zenos to prove his superiority, while Zenos paid no attention, considering it a waste of time. Though he was obliged to attend, the instructor displayed a magical circle and asked a student to draw it on the board. Chris drew a simple healing circle perfectly, earning the teacher's admiration. Then Chris told the teacher that Zenos also wished to participate, even though he had not intended to, yet was compelled to do so. Zenos began drawing a circle he had learned from his master long ago, and when Chris saw its shape, he laughed loudly, for it was entirely different from the conventional magical circles found in books. However, the teacher was utterly astonished upon seeing it, for it was an advanced circle capable of regenerating body parts, not merely healing. Zenos explained that it was a regeneration circle, albeit slightly unusual. If the patient had lost several fingers, the spell would restore one of them at random. He added that the circle was exceedingly complex and consumed an immense amount of energy. Zenos' ability succeeded with remarkable ease, and the teacher immediately recognized his genius, pleading for him to join his research laboratory. Zenos politely declined. Meanwhile, Chris seethed inwardly, furious at the attention Zenos had stolen from him. That same day, news reached Gotoubun about the arrival of a remarkably talented new student, capable of defeating 30 ghosts at once. Yet Gotoubun paid no heed, dismissing it with, "There is no time to indulge in rumors." Moments later, a report arrived about the increasing appearance of ghosts in the cemeteries. Gotoubun decided to send the student on a mission to personally verify his strength. In the evening, Zenos joined the exorcist squad, with Chris among them. Chris attempted to take command of the team, but soon realized they were trapped. Suspicious and alarmed, before the ghosts could attack, Zenos activated a powerful healing spell that immediately vanquished all the ghosts. He then said to them, "Well done. You brought the ghosts to my neighborhood, and I have finished them off." However, Chris interrupted, claiming all the credit for himself, and the students present believed him, reporting to the teachers that Chris had saved them. Afterwards, Chris approached Zenos, saying arrogantly, "I will never acknowledge your talent." Zenos paid him no heed, replying calmly, "If you wish to take all the credit for yourself, then do not leave now." Chris was puzzled and asked, "Why?" At that very moment, the ground split open, and the Ghost King himself emerged. The students could hardly believe the true power of the creature, yet it stood clearly before them. Despite the terror it might have inspired, they did not panic, for Chris's presence among them was enough to act as a shield. No one dared approach the king, and they decided to leave him to confront the battle alone. Zenos could have intervened, yet he chose not to, allowing Chris to face the confrontation on his own. Krishna tried to confront the king, using the most powerful healing spell he possessed, but it was futile. The king was impervious, and he had no chance of victory, yet his pride would not allow him to admit defeat, so he continued running around the beast, trying to avoid being crushed beneath its massive feet. At that moment, Zenos informed the girl that dead spirits are drawn to monsters stronger than themselves, which might explain the sudden appearance of the ghosts. However, Zenos sensed that the situation was far more complicated. Krishna was in a dire state, repeatedly slammed against walls while casting his healing spells on himself, just to stay in the fight. Eventually, the king seized him and was on the verge of devouring him. Zenos decided to intervene, preparing one of the most powerful spells he knew. When he unleashed it, a brilliant light enveloped the king, and an immense surge of healing energy scorched and incinerated it completely. After the battle, Zenos reflected on the girl's words and confirmed that the surge of zombies and spirits was connected to Carmilla's presence. When he returned home, he asked her if she had any idea why the ghost's activity had intensified. She admitted that she had not realized she was deceiving the monsters and asked whether he intended to expel her from the house. He considered the matter and realized that her influence on those around him made it optimal for her to remain nearby so he could maintain control of the situation. Carmilla was stunned and confused. It was the first time in her life anyone had spoken to her in such a manner, and she promised to stay with him. The next day, Krishna went to meet his supervisor, who intended to praise him for his outstanding performance in the exorcism mission, based on reports from the students that Krishna had vanquished all the monsters with a single spell. However, Krishna knew the truth well. Zenos was the true hero. The supervisor, relying solely on what he had been told, assumed that Zenos had not been remarkable and would not join Gotoubun's research group. Krishna could have stayed silent and continued the lie, but guided by his conscience, he decided to confess the truth, telling the supervisor that Zenos was the one who had defeated the evil spirits and the king of zombies, and that he had witnessed it firsthand. After leaving the office, Krishna initially felt frustrated that his reputation had been compromised, but in the end, he realized that Zenos had saved his life, and with his honest confession, he became certain that Zenos would indeed join the research group. After some time, Naruto arrived at Zenos, beaming with excitement, and informed him that Goldoran's laboratory requested his presence personally. Zenos was slightly surprised, as he had assumed Krishna had claimed all the credit for himself, yet he felt joy because he had surpassed the first step of his plan to achieve his goal and uncover Goldoran's secrets. Naruto explained that there were further steps to follow, such as a personal interview with the professor. Zenos inquired why all these procedures were necessary merely to join a research team, and Naruto replied that Goldoran was an exceptionally powerful man who took great care in selecting those around him. Zenos wondered how Goldoran possessed all this strength. Wasn't Naruto, as an elite healer, the most capable? Naruto smiled and clarified that a title does not always equate to true power, especially in Goldoran's case, as his rank was awarded for his contributions to medicine rather than combat prowess. Upon arriving at the meeting hall, Goldoran introduced himself, and his first question to Zenos was, "What do you know how to do?" Zenos responded that he was a healer and he treated people, nothing more. However, Goldoran was unconvinced and stated that this was insufficient. He explained that healers alone were not enough. One must possess greater ambition. Goldoran emphasized that healers held a significant position in this country, to the extent that their existence depended on their abilities, yet the true benefits went entirely to the ruling class. That was why he sought to bring others into his fold, not for their welfare but to exploit their skills. He further clarified that a person's value was determined by their advancement, and he had no intention of aiding or burdening others. After concluding his speech, he asked Zenos to draw the magical circle he had presented in the previous lesson, so that Goldoran could evaluate him accurately. Zenos did not fully understand the purpose, but complied with the request. Upon examining the circle, Goldoran informed him that he would meet him in the laboratory and begin working with him the next day. The following morning, as Zenos walked down the corridor, he noticed members of the laboratory passing by. Eventually, he saw Krishna and asked why they were standing in that line. Krishna explained that it was part of Goldoran's daily round to visit patients. Zenos was astonished and said, "Does it take all this just to see a single patient?" Krishna replied that it was purely a display for influential figures. Goldoran's visits were limited to important personalities only. Zenos' goal was to follow Goldoran, yet he could do nothing while standing at the back of the line. He decided to move ahead and reach the front. The patient complained of pain in his leg, and Goldoran remarked that the issue was simple, requiring only 3 of his disciples. Zenos was surprised, but then he observed Goldoran using a spell that drew energy from the 3 students to heal the wound. Indeed, the injury was fully treated, though the 3 whose energy had been drained exhibited slight fatigue. Zenos hurried back to Chris and asked him about the spell. Chris explained that Goldoran's specialty was health transfer magic, which allows the life energy of one person to be channeled to another for healing. Even if the healer is not very powerful, they can utilize the energy of others to perform treatment. He added that serious injuries demand a large amount of energy, which is why the burden is distributed among groups, and typically the side effects are minor, such as fatigue. Zenos remarked that this magic was unusual and began to understand why Goldoran gathered so many healers around him. Chris added that this was only half the truth. There were rumors that the current head of the academy was about to retire, and Goldoran was trying to consolidate support for the upcoming elections. Zenos thanked Chris for the information and asked about a person named Al-Farid. Chris confirmed that he knew him, but admitted he did not like him, because the last time he had been invited to a banquet at Goldoran's, Al-Farid had disappeared immediately afterward. Surprised, Zenos asked why, and Chris explained that Goldoran held private banquets for his close associates, and receiving an invitation was considered a great honor for the guests. At that moment, Zenos thought his investigation was complete and that matters were settled. However, Naruto clarified that they had not yet reached the end of the road, and that what had occurred indicated a connection between Goldoran and Al-Farid's disappearance, though this was not sufficient evidence to prove his guilt. Therefore, Arnardo instructed Zenos to earn Goldobun's trust and become one of his close associates so that he could attend the private banquets and uncover the truth. He even offered an additional monetary reward if Zenos succeeded in accomplishing this mission. Zenos, who had wished to leave immediately, agreed to stay and continue the investigation on the condition that he would brief Arnardo on everything about his former mentor as soon as the mission was completed. The following day, in the capital, Zenos met Chris, who told him that he had a great opportunity to take care of Goldobun's pampered dog. Zenos soon realized, however, that Chris was trying to dodge the task and pass it on to him. Surprised, Zenos asked whether Chris was a member of the research team or merely an employee assigned to care for the dog. Chris explained that Goldobun was currently meeting with the 7 nobles whose favor he sought, and someone needed to attend to the dog. Zenos asked Chris if all of this was aimed at promotion. Chris replied affirmatively, explaining that his goal was to ascend to the upper class and enjoy luxury. Zenos was astonished, having believed the mission's purpose was to help people. Chris clarified that this had been his initial dream, but after realizing that his magic alone was insufficient, he decided to exploit it to earn money and live comfortably. Meanwhile, a man named Bond arrived and mocked Krisen for still being preoccupied with the dog. Zenos asked who this man was, and Krisen explained that he was Goldobun's chief secretary, yet he had obtained his position through favoritism from an old friend and did not perform his duties properly. Suddenly, Bond smashed a glass near Krisen while intoxicated. Although it did not strike him directly, the shards fell beside the dog, frightening her and causing her to run away. Krisen chased after her in panic, fearing Goldobun's wrath if she were harmed, but the dog dashed into the street and was struck by a passing vehicle. Krisen rushed to her side, attempting to heal her with his powerful magic. He managed to stop the bleeding but could not restore her body to its original state. Zenos tried to calm him, insisting that the crucial thing was that she was still alive. Krisen, however, refused to accept this. He argued that mere survival was insufficient, for she would remain disfigured and covered with wounds, and if Goldobun discovered what had happened, he might kill her. Unwilling to see Krisen suffer, Zenos raised his hand and began treating the dog. Krisen tried to convince him that it would not be enough, asserting that even with the power that defeated the Zombie King, regenerating skin and muscle required tremendous skill. Nevertheless, Zenos completed the healing swiftly, and the dog returned to her perfect original state with no trace of her previous injuries. Zenos also repaired the broken support, enabling her to move freely, though it was advised that she rest for the remainder of the day. Afterwards, Zenos returned home, where Yaoi awaited him. She asked if he had anything he wished to say, explaining that she had come to request that he go out for a walk with her. Zenos was somewhat surprised by her request, yet he agreed, and they departed together. While walking through the forest, he asked if she had anything she wanted to say. She revealed that she wished to apologize, believing that if she had not been so weak, she might have drawn Goldobun's attention, ensuring that he would not have been implicated at all. Zenos reassured her that no apology was necessary, for he would receive his due reward for his work. Without this opportunity, he would never have gained access to the royal hospital, nor would he have learned more about his old mentor, making the situation very beneficial. He assured her that she need not feel any guilt. Yaoi admitted that she knew nothing about the teacher Zenos spoke of, and asked him about his character. He replied that he was not entirely sure, for his teacher was somewhat enigmatic, yet he had taught Zenos reading and writing, imparted many lessons about healing magic and the world at large, and Zenos had devoted his entire life to this teacher. Upon hearing this, Yaoi remarked that it resembled her situation with Arnardo when she first began her work as a healer. Arnardo had taken her under his wing, teaching her much about his research, but due to his numerous commitments, he had left her responsible for overseeing his work, and from that time onward, she had assumed the role of caring for him. Zenos sensed that this matter was far from ordinary and inquired about the nature of her relationship with Arnardo. She explained that he was her maternal uncle, which made them very close. A short while later, while they were returning to the royal hospital, Krisen suddenly appeared before them, seeking Zenos' assistance, and it was evident from his disheveled appearance that he was in grave trouble. Let us pause for a moment and turn our attention to Goldobun. He returned to his office after hastily finishing lunch with Lord Vinal. Upon entering, his other assistant greeted him. Noting signs of displeasure on Goldobun's face, the assistant asked if anything had gone wrong during his absence, to which Goldobun replied that everything had proceeded smoothly. As they discussed the corridor with Lord Vinel, the latter mentioned that his daughter had developed a peculiar facial sensitivity and inquired whether Goldrin could remedy the situation. Goldrin pondered briefly and realized that the condition could leave an unusual mark on her face, though it was not dangerous and might fade naturally over time. However, he added that if the girl was in urgent need of restoration and desired her face returned to its original state immediately, the only solution would involve removing the affected area, a procedure that would leave a significant scar. At that moment, no girl in the world would consent to such an operation, particularly the daughter of a prominent lord like Vinel. Goldrin could have healed her skin magically and restored it completely if sufficient healing energy from donors had been available. Yet the situation was complicated. Lord Vinel's daughter was restrained, refusing anyone to see her face, and the process required the presence of 2 assistants, all of which caused extreme tension for Goldrin. He decided to calm himself for a moment and turned his attention to checking on his own dog. On his way there, Zenos encountered Bonds, who teased him sharply and mentioned that the little dog had been hit by a carriage 2 days earlier. Goldrin grew furious, suspecting that he was somehow involved in the incident. However, Bonds reassured him that the person who had been walking the dog at the time of the accident had rescued it immediately and treated it, so there was no need for concern. Goldrin left Bonds and hurried to his dog's room to check on her. To his astonishment, she was fine, only slightly exhausted, with no wounds or signs of the accident remaining. Something that defied belief, as no trace remained despite a sorcerer having handled the injuries with such precision. Since Krishna had been assigned to watch over the dog, Goldrin assumed it was he who had taken care of her, bringing the matter back to Krishna. Krishna, who had been tasked with treating Lord Vinel's daughter, was not fully qualified for the mission and confided the situation to Zenos. Zenos, observing the case, thought it straightforward and likely to resolve on its own. The complication, however, was that the girl refused to attend any gatherings, her face bearing a strange deformity, placing immense pressure on Krishna. Zenos asked Krishna why he did not simply excise the affected area. Krishna explained that the roots had penetrated deeply into the skin, and cutting it out would severely deform the girl's face, leaving a large scar. Surprised, Zenos inquired why Goldrin had entrusted him with such a difficult task. Krishna replied that Goldrin had assumed he was the one who treated the dog after hearing about the incident. He had not wanted to acknowledge that Zenos had done it, fearing dismissal or a loss of trust. Thus, Krishna had been compelled to request Zenos' assistance indirectly to ensure the operation's success. Suddenly, Lily appeared to serve them tea. Being Zenos' younger sister, her presence took Krishna by surprise, and he noticed her kindness, offering her a few words of praise. The following day, Goldrin took Krishna with him to Lord Vinel's palace, accompanied by Zenos. As soon as Charlotte appeared to concern was evident in her expression. She explained that the situation had become difficult. She refused to undergo any procedure, insisting that she was not ready to sacrifice the beauty of her face for the sake of a wound or a scar. Vinel, however, had complete confidence in Goldrin's ability to heal her without leaving any mark. He instructed Goldrin to assist the girl in persuading her to accept the procedure. Goldrin agreed, and together they proceeded to Charlotte's room, with Vinel himself being the first to attempt to convince her, assuring her that her face would be fully restored to its original state. After the operation, Charlotte felt an increasing sense of trust toward Goldrin, realizing that he had never betrayed her. Yet, she immediately recalled the time someone had promised to bring her a gift, either a fur or a fox, on her birthday, but it was never delivered. Although the request had come from Zenos' team and it was no one's fault, and Fennel had been completely innocent, the promise had ultimately gone unfulfilled, leaving her with nothing further to say or remember. Goldrin decided to seize the opportunity. He entered personally and introduced himself as a professor at the Royal Hospital, assuring Charlotte that she could rely on him to ensure the success of the operation. However, Charlotte refused, expressing fear that someone might manipulate her to disfigure her face, while Goldrin and Fennel attempted to convince her that the procedure was safe. Krishna was lost in his imagination, dreaming that completely healing Charlotte's face might make her fall in love with him, while Zenos refrained from responding, intending to show that such an outcome would not happen. At that moment, Krishna decided to take action and asked Fennel to speak to Charlotte. He entered and introduced himself as Goldrin's assistant, but Charlotte immediately interrupted, saying that his voice was annoying and that he was unfit to speak to her again, for everyone before him had failed. Then Goldrin asked Zenos to intervene. He approached the door and introduced himself as an assistant as well. Charlotte was about to dismiss him, but he told her that he wished to speak regarding the operation, reassuring her that it was natural to fear exposing her face to surgery and that the illness did not threaten her life. The worst possible outcome, he explained, would be the appearance of a significant mark on her face. After saying these words, he turned to leave, but Charlotte stopped him, asking whether what he said was true. She allowed him and the others to enter her room. When Krishna attempted to explain, she interrupted him once again, claiming that his voice was annoying. Gotoubun intervened, explaining that based on previous cases, if the illness persisted, it would leave a large mark on the face. This terrified her, prompting her to ask for the solution. He replied that the only solution was surgery, yet she remained hesitant and fearful of failure. Fennel attempted once more to convince her, explaining that avoiding the operation would only allow the mark to grow and that it was best to let Gotoubun act. She asked whether he could guarantee that her face would remain unharmed, but Gotoubun could not make such a promise, especially as he would not perform the surgery himself. At that point, Charlotte cried out, declaring that she would agree only if someone could guarantee the operation's success 100%. After a short while, Zenos noticed Charlotte sitting on the balcony of her room, surrounded by birds, and it seemed that she loved them dearly. Yet, he observed an injured bird among them. He asked her about its condition, and she replied that she had found it in the garden, and that its state was dire, that it would never fly again. Just like her, she now could not attend parties or dance as she once had. Zenos asked her, "Do you truly wish to recover?" Charlotte responded, "Of course I want to, but I do not wish my face to be disfigured." However, after Zenos completed his work on the injured bird, it took flight again, as if it had never been harmed. Charlotte was astonished by what she saw. Zenos told her that she could achieve the same for herself. Whether noble or common, anyone in pain would receive his full effort, for healing was his duty. His words touched her heart and earned her trust. In the end, she agreed to the procedure and had complete confidence in him. After Charlotte had fallen asleep, Vinel left her room and told Gotoubun that it was time for him to perform the operation. Yet Gotoubun had no intention of intervening. He intended to leave the entire procedure to Zenos and Krishna, and all he desired was to claim the credit afterward. He turned to Krishna and said firmly, "Do not make a mistake." Zenos noticed Krishna's tension and tried to ease the pressure, telling him he could handle the operation alone. Krishna asked, "Have you performed such a procedure before?" Zenos replied, "Yes, but that was when I was young." Nevertheless, Zenos' experience surpassed Krishna's, and he was ready to take on the surgery. However, Gotoubun intervened, saying, "Krishna is the one who must perform it," forcing Zenos to act as his assistant. Krishna held the scalpel, his hands trembling as he tried to follow the steps he had learned in the hospital. Zenos said to him, "Wait, let me first scan her body." Krishna did not understand what Zenos meant, so he explained that he had traced the roots within Charlotte's face. There was no need for random cutting. Any mistake could be catastrophic, as though one were severing life itself rather than tissue. Thanks to Zenos' instructions, the operation proceeded smoothly. Yet, before the final step, Krishna discovered something terrifying. The last root was entangled with Charlotte's facial nerves. If it were cut, her face would be permanently disfigured. He suggested they close the wound and take her to the royal hospital for proper treatment. But Gotoubun, concerned more with his appearance in front of others than the girl's condition, seized Krishna's hand forcefully and compelled him to cut the nerve. Then he began shouting, blaming Krishna for having ruined Charlotte's face himself. Vinyl stepped in, attempting to calm the situation, but Gotoubun declared that his inexperienced assistant had ruined everything. Krishna was stunned, unable to respond, while Gotoubun felt relieved, having shifted the blame onto another. Zenos, however, remained outspoken, and when Charlotte called for his help, he shouted to Vinyl that Gotoubun was exaggerating, insisting that what had occurred was not a disaster. He had grown weary of remaining silent. After Gotoubun proceeded with the scalpel, he completed the excision of the final roots and then employed his healing magic, treating Charlotte's facial injuries and fully restoring her appearance. Hours later, Charlotte awoke from the anesthesia, and the first thing she requested was a mirror. Upon seeing her reflection, tears of joy streamed down her face, for the blemish that had marred her features had vanished completely. Despite this, Goldoran claimed all credit for the operation, and Lord Vanel believed that he had performed the surgery and saved his daughter. Charlotte, however, was not entirely convinced, for during the procedure she had heard Zenos reassuring her, and she knew in her heart that he was truly the one who had saved her, a truth she would never forget. Later, Zenos was assisting Yoma in storing some medicines from Arnardo's laboratory. Charlotte remarked that she did not know the purpose of these substances. Suddenly, Chryson entered hastily, his face bright with excitement, announcing that they had been invited to a special dinner hosted by Goldoran. Despite his joy, there was a hint of apprehension in his expression. Charlotte asked, "Aren't you happy?" He replied, "I am excited, but I fear facing Goldoran again after what happened. Nevertheless, this is an opportunity that could elevate me, so I will go." Chryson informed Zenos that he would meet Goldoran before the dinner. The banquet prepared by Goldoran commenced, with all the guests seated at the tables while he stood proudly, informing everyone that he had gained the support of Lord Vanel, effectively securing his appointment as director of the Royal Hospital before the month's end. Applause erupted for Goldoran, and even Chryson, initially hesitant, felt exhilarated at being present for such an occasion, as it offered a chance to encounter influential figures among the attendees. While Chryson conversed with the guests, Zenos sought information about a man named Alfred. He discovered that at the previous banquet he had encountered Bonds and had spoken with him. Zenos approached Bonds and asked if he remembered someone named Alfred. Bonds replied that he recalled him well, as he had been the only one who left everyone else to converse with him while others were occupied with the festivities. Bonds added that Alfred was somewhat peculiar, and noted that Goldoran always warned his students against interacting with Bonds. Yet Alfred had paid no heed to this warning. Zenos was astonished by Goldoran's attitude toward Bonds, especially considering that he had appointed him as his personal secretary despite the fact that he did not actually perform his duties. He asked Bonds how he had obtained the position, to which Bonds replied with a smile, "We are old friends, but let things be as they are." He does not remember. Zenos realized that continuing the conversation with Bonds would be futile, as he appeared intoxicated and unlikely to provide any useful information. However, Lily sensed that Bonds was aware of a significant secret about Goldoran. She approached the waiter, requesting some large buttons, and decided to secure them to compel Bonds to reveal what he knew, while she spent the entire event praising him and encouraging him to talk about himself. Carmilla, upon hearing this, asked Zenos whether he had considered another possibility regarding the explosion. Noting that Lily's explanation seemed logical, she added, however, that the explosion had not affected Vanel alone. Others might have been injured, yet curiously, the sole survivor was Vanel, which was highly unusual. Since Goldoran was known for his life energy transfer technique, Carmilla suspected that at that moment he might have transferred the life force of all the injured into Vanel, essentially sacrificing an entire group to save a single person. Although the law of the kingdom might not regard this as a grave crime, Zenos could not reconcile with the idea of sacrificing others' lives in such a manner. She further suggested that Alfred may have been aware of all this, which explained his disappearance. Carmilla then asked Zenos what he intended to do with this information, to which he replied that he would report it to Bernardo, considering it not his place to judge what had occurred. Zenos returned to the banquet, and upon arrival he saw everyone staring toward the gate. He asked Chryson what was happening, and Chryson explained that there was chaos at the entrance. Looking closer, Zenos saw Yom standing before the guards, who were preventing anyone from entering without Goldoran's invitation, yet she insisted that the matter was urgent and that she must meet her companion immediately. At that moment, if Yom had seen Zenos amid the crowd and called out loudly, Sophia's anger would have erupted, warning her that this could compromise Zenos' covert operation. Yom apologized and clarified that Zan's condition was critical and there was no time to delay. Hearing the commotion, Goldoran lost his composure and shouted, "What have these deceitful creatures brought into my house?" ordering the guards to expel them immediately. Before the guards could move, Linga fell to the ground carrying Zan on her shoulder and called out to Zenos loudly. Upon hearing Zenos' name, the onlookers began to speculate whether he was truly involved in the incident. Zenos remained silent. Yom hurriedly explained that Zan had sustained a very serious injury during work. Goldoran approached Zenos and questioned his relationship with the others, but Zenos ignored him and informed the others that he would begin his work immediately. Goldoran, enraged, asked, "Do you really intend to help them?" This will ruin your future. Yet Zenos remained indifferent, replying, I am not concerned with any of that. I heal those in need, not those seeking approval. Afterward, he bid farewell to Krisen and said to Lily, let us go, then leapt over the wall. Krisen watched them depart, wondering how Zenos could so easily abandon his own future. Goldoran approached Krisen and said, I hope you do not follow in his footsteps, for Zenos has now become my enemy, and I will ensure that he never works in this hospital again. Krisen agreed, replying, it was a foolish act, yet I see that Zenos heals anyone, whether ordinary or not, and I know that Goldoran is willing to betray anyone for power. This is not the path I wish to follow. Krisen decided to follow the same path as Zenos, and leapt over the wall to assist him in the healing, only to arrive and find that Zenos had long since completed the treatment. When she said to him, you left to do all of this, but honestly, this is the best thing you have ever done in your life, and I am proud of you as a friend. The next day, Zenos went to meet Bernardo and told him everything he knew about Goldoran's secret. Bernardo recalled that Alfred had been injured when he was young, perhaps one of the victims of the same incident, and since Goldoran was most likely the one responsible for the explosion, he intended to take revenge during the celebration after winning the director position. Therefore, Bernardo decided that he must attend the party, but he indicated to Zenos that he could not describe how valuable the information he had obtained was, and that his work had ended. Zenos asked Bernardo, if everything is over, may I leave? He replied, that was the agreement from the beginning, but I will wait a little to prepare your departure papers, and then I will inform you of everything I know about your teacher. Everyone suggested holding a farewell party for Zenos, and that night everyone gathered in Zenos' room. Krisen was deeply saddened, unsure of how to act after Zenos' departure, and he told him, or Lily, that he seemed very depressed, yet this did little to ease his feelings. Zenos tried to reassure Krisen, telling him that he was a clever young man and would be able to adapt anywhere. Krisen was somewhat moved by his words, but remained uneasy, beginning to suspect that he was hallucinating, feeling as though a ghost stood behind the wall staring at him. The following morning, Zenos was ready to depart. He bid farewell to everyone, including Lily, but before leaving, Yom handed him a letter from Bernardo containing important information about Zenos and his teacher. When they arrived at Bernardo's office to retrieve the letter, they found something strange in his office. What it was, we shall discover later. At that very moment, Bernardo had concluded with everyone at Goldoran's party. To understand what had happened, we must rewind a day, when everything was proceeding perfectly at Goldoran's gathering. Lord Vanel still felt deeply indebted to him, and all the attendees were determined to vote for him in the elections, meaning he was closer than ever to achieving his goal. Yet all that was unfolding now had its origin 13 years ago, when Goldoran, by accident, caused a massive explosion during one of his experiments. At that time, the streets were filled with the injured, yet Goldoran paid them no heed and intended to return home as if he were not involved at all. However, as he walked, he noticed one of the injured, and it turned out to be a noble, Vanel himself. At that moment, his thoughts activated, and he told himself, if I save a noble, my standing could rise swiftly. He resolved to extract the life energy from the other victims and transfer it all to Vanel so that Vanel would remain indebted to him as long as he lived. And while he carried out his sinister plan, intoxicated by the thrill of his triumph, he failed to notice Bond standing behind him, capturing everything on camera. When Goldoran realized that Bonds had recorded the events, he was forced to silence him by appointing him first secretary and granting him a full salary, despite not working a single day, all to ensure his secrecy. And thus the story began. Everything had been unfolding in Goldoran's favor, until Bernardo suddenly appeared and spoke to him. Goldoran assumed that Bernardo had come to befriend him in preparation for his becoming the next director of the hospital, as Goldoran had previously heard that Bernardo had brought Zenos to the hospital. He decided to complain about him. Goldoran stated that Zenos, despite his skill in healing, had committed an unforgivable act in his view, namely that he had gone to treat someone in the poor districts. Goldoran firmly believed that the lives of these impoverished people were worthless, existing solely to die in service of the nobles. What Arnaldo witnessed was utterly shocking. At the same time, Zenos and Yuma were observing in Arnaldo's office the old image of Goldoran extracting life energy from the people to heal Vanel, a picture dating back to the incident 13 years ago, When Zenos explained everything that had transpired over the past few hours, he suddenly paused, stating that he needed to meet with Bonds, as Yuma had noticed in the background of the image Alfred as a child, injured, meaning he had indeed survived the catastrophe. Yet what shocked them even more was that she saw a woman in the picture whose face seemed incredibly familiar. The moment we returned to the banquet, Goldrin was stunned to find all the attendees lying unconscious on the floor. Arnardo approached him and told him with absolute calm that they had all been poisoned, including Goldrin himself. Arnardo, being a specialist in medicine with deep knowledge of powerful toxins, had placed the poison in the wine everyone drank. This poison caused its victims to gradually lose consciousness, and then their life force began to fade until death claimed them within 10 minutes. As for Goldrin, he had consumed a smaller dose, granting him nearly 15 minutes before facing his end. Goldrin, shaken, asked Arnardo why he had done this. Arnardo answered simply, he wanted revenge for what happened 13 years ago. Goldrin could not believe that Arnardo knew anything about that incident, but Arnardo had been suspicious of him for a long time. And with Zenos' help, he had finally obtained undeniable proof. Goldrin had assumed that Bonds killed someone in the photograph, but he discovered that he had been mistaken. Arnardo decided that the game would begin now. Goldrin remembered what he had once said, that not all souls are equal, the very belief that led him to save Vanel and abandon the others to die. Now the time had come for him to face the cost of that decision. Goldrin tried to defend himself, claiming that the others would have died anyway. But Arnardo responded mercilessly, no, because Ferd survived, but his wife was the one who died after her life force had been drained by Ferd. Finally, Arnardo said to Goldrin, even if you possess the ability to absorb life force, you would need an immense amount to heal yourself, and fortunately for you, the place is full of unconscious people. Arnardo then wondered aloud, would Goldrin repeat what he did in the past and sacrifice everyone to save himself? Goldrin was shocked, standing silent for a moment, unable to answer. Then he remembered that Arnardo was a medical specialist, which meant he might carry the antidote with him. He began bargaining for his life, telling Arnardo that if he gave him the antidote, he would lighten his punishment in court. But the bottle in Arnardo's hand turned out to contain more poisoned wine, and when Goldrin saw him drink from it without hesitation, his shock deepened. Arnardo had poisoned himself as well, and he now had only a short time before death. Yet Arnardo did not deny that he had indeed created a true antidote, which meant he was granting Goldrin one final choice. Either save himself, Vanel, and everyone at the banquet, or save Arnardo in the hope that he could save them all. Goldrin asked him, do you really think you will get away with this so easily? Arnardo replied, do not waste your time. The decision must be made now. These people will die. Goldrin had no choice but to enter the game and think quickly, and of course the first person he thought of saving was himself, then Vanel after him. And because he was not certain whether Arnardo truly possessed the antidote or not, he did not dare risk saving him, and without the slightest hesitation, he decided to drain the life force of everyone in order to save himself and save Vanel. And although Arnardo expected this decision, he still felt sorrow, for he had held on to a faint hope that Goldrin might change. The truth was that the poison Arnardo drank was one of the weakest kinds, and he could have sacrificed himself to save everyone. But Goldrin suddenly stopped and shouted loudly, of course I will sacrifice them for myself. My life is more important than theirs. I am about to become the director of the royal hospital, and it makes no sense for me to die for their sake. Suddenly, Arnardo began coughing blood and collapsed violently, for the poison he had crafted was not supposed to cause such an effect. Before he could think or act, Zenos and the others burst into the room, shocked by what Arnardo had done. Yuma asked him, how could you do this? And because he was her uncle, he felt he owed her an explanation. So he began telling her about his fiancée, whom he had met 13 years ago. They were both at the beginning of their journey as healers, and her dream was to save as many people as she could, while he wished to help her reach that dream. But one day news reached him that she had been injured in an explosion and had died. At the time he believed it was merely fate, so he chose to live on and continue her dream. But when Fred visited Goldrin to offer his condolences and returned, he told Arnardo that his fiancée's death was no coincidence, and that Goldrin was the true reason behind it. From that day on, Fred disappeared, leaving Arnardo torn between doubt and denial. Was his wife killed unjustly or not? He remained silent for a long time, but in the end, he sought Zenos' help to investigate the case and prepare for vengeance. Krishna said he understood Arnardo's pain and agreed with him that Goldrin was a vile human being beyond hope, but poisoning innocents to avenge himself was a grave mistake. Zenos agreed, saying that he would not allow anyone to die today, then stood at the center of the room so he could reach all the afflicted. Arnardo could not understand why Zenos would do such a thing when he would gain nothing from it, but the truth was that Zenos realized that if he let matters continue in this manner, Zenos realized that Arnardo would be furious and that Yoma would be deeply upset. Her farewell celebration for him was still vivid in his mind, and he felt he had never repaid her kindness. He decided that this was the least he could do for her. Yet despite his capabilities, Arnardo believed Zenos would not be able to save anyone, for he did not know the composition of the poison. Even if Arnardo attempted to explain it, there would not be enough time for analysis. Zenos chose to take the risk. He raised his hand and began casting a healing spell, but Arnardo warned him that ordinary magic would not work, for it healed only physical injuries, while the poison required a special kind of treatment. However, Zenos had known this from the beginning, and thus he resolved to continue channeling a sustained healing spell through his hand, keeping the souls alive until the poison naturally dissipated from their bodies. He instructed Krishna and Yoma to focus on the individuals whose conditions were weakest first. Meanwhile, Arnardo could not believe Zenos had managed to maintain such a high level of magic for so long. Doubt began to creep into his heart, and he asked himself, was I right in what I did? His wife had dreamed of saving lives, not avenging them, while now the man responsible for her death was on the verge of becoming the hospital director, someone who believed treatment should be reserved only for the wealthy. Arnardo could no longer remain silent. If Golden assumed the position, the poor would never find medicine or care. And if all souls were truly equal, then vengeance in his eyes became justified. He fell to his knees and thanked Zenos for saving everyone. Zenos replied simply, I only did my duty. We will send you the bill later. Everything that happened drained me greatly. Even though Zenos had saved everyone, Golden remained enraged, shouting and begging him for treatment. But Zenos believed Golden had already been expelled and therefore no longer had any authority over him. Golden turned to his remaining students and ordered them to heal him. Yet after hearing everything before they lost consciousness, they now understood that he had intended to sacrifice them. Thus, they refused to help him. Zenos said that Golden's students had declined, but he himself could still treat him on one condition. Golden must pay for the treatment. And since Zenos was exhausted, the cost would be doubled. Golden hesitated and tried to bargain, but when he realized that Zenos might truly let him die, he was forced to agree. Even so, this was the least that could happen to him. For Vinel had heard everything about the explosion that took place 13 years ago, and he appeared filled with anger and shock. The next day, Arnardo was taken for questioning, and Zenos and Yoma used their connections to visit him. Yoma was happy to see that he had returned to his usual self and looked cheerful despite everything that had happened. Arnardo was surprised at how quickly they had arrived, and Zenos told him it was thanks to someone he knew in the Imperial Guard. She was the deputy, Krishna. Zenos thanked her for her help, but she replied that this was nothing compared to what he had done for her, and that he did not need to thank her at all. What mattered now was that Zenos had come today to ask an important question. Had Arnardo truly intended to poison everyone? Arnardo admitted openly that Zenos was correct, and explained that he had never intended to harm anyone. His plan relied on using a fake poison that would make people feel as though they had been poisoned without causing any real harm, in order to force Goldorin to confess his crime. The poison Arnardo had prepared was meant to paralyze the body without causing permanent damage, making the deception appear more realistic. But something unexpected happened. Someone had replaced the fake poison with real poison. Everything spiraled out of control, and Arnardo began to suspect that Alfred was the one who had done it, and that he might have been present at the party. When Krishna heard this, she told him this could actually be good news, since it might serve as evidence proving his innocence if it were confirmed that someone else had swapped the poison. But he stopped her, saying that even if he were innocent, he realized that the real poison was used, and he still continued with his plan and was prepared to cause the death of everyone present. something he could never forgive himself for. Krishna added that there was no need to worry, for no one had died, and Zenos saved everyone before they suffered any harm. She also said she could use her position to have the charges against him dropped. Zenos smiled, saying he wasn't sure how legal that was, but he wouldn't refuse. So they agreed to leave the matter to Krishna and let her handle it as she saw fit. Before Zenos left, Arnardo asked for a final word. He confessed that he could not believe Alfred, after having his life energy drained, had managed to survive the incident that had taken place 13 years ago. For that reason, Arnardo had become almost certain that the person appearing now as Alfred was not the real one, but merely an imposter. And since Zenos had been the one to foil the plan intended to kill everyone, Arnardo became convinced that the imposter's next strike might be directed at Zenos himself. Elsewhere in the kingdom, it was revealed that the mastermind behind all these events was the guide, who was currently controlling Alfred's body. He was clearly frustrated by the failure of his plan, for things had not gone as he expected. Meanwhile, Zenos returned to resume his normal life once again, as a hidden healer working in the slums, continuing his mission to help those in need. And here, dear viewer, the tale comes to an end. We hope it pleased you and that you enjoyed it. And if you want a second season, let us know in the comments. Before you close the video, don't forget to press the like button to support us, subscribe for more episodes, and activate the notification bell to watch all the new anime on the channel. Write your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in new episodes. Farewell.